While it may be Friday the 13th, the Sportswire Radio team is going to talk all the latest happenings here in the world of sports, and who knows, with a touch of anything that could happen. And to open things up is one of my guys. Of course, you hear him on the hockey fan chat, and he talks all different things on Twitter when it comes to wrestling, you name it, hockey. He's out there, and his name is Randy Dillon. And Randy, good evening here on a Friday, and I should probably give you the proper send off I do for everybody else. So, with wait for it, further ado here on the Sports Report, number one, Levels Watcher, host of the Hockey Fan Chat. His name is Randy Dillon. Randy, now how are you?
I'm doing great, Tom. How are you? I'm pumped. I'm ready to go.
Well, I'm glad I could pump you up because I know you do a podcast. I hear these other people out there. I even hear people that do this for a living, and I'm always wondering, like, where's the big intro? Even guys like Busted Open and on Sirius XM and other shows, but we always try to get people pumped up, especially because it is a Friday night. And Randy, we speak a lot about wrestling on Sportswire Radio. We don't do so much about the WWE and AEW and these other companies, but tonight there's some good reason to bring it up here, even though we're usually a major sports show here on Sportswire Radio. But what is going on here with the WWE? Some people had said they were sold to Saudi Arabia. Vince McMahon was going to basically come back into power. And while he still might be in power, it seems like there's a whole number of different things being thrown at him, chairs and who knows what else. But I mean, who's in and who's out?
Oh my, this week for wrestling, if you're a WWE fan, it was hectic. Got the news, Vince McMahon coming back, Stephanie McMahon stepping down, which really was a shocker in my eyes. Then I think a few hours later, all the reports came up, WWE being bought by Saudi Arabia, and Vince is going to get back in power. And in my eyes, I'm thinking how the women's division is going to be affected, what's going to happen to superstars like Sami Zayn and MVP because of their religious beliefs. It was just a nightmare, and I'm glad the news came out that it's not sold. But listen, I think a lot of us thought Vince McMahon was not going to come back to the WWE. He found a way to, he pretty much the hostile takeover, as you would say, him taking back control of his company. Now, with news of it where it's going to be sold, there's so many different options because everyone saw it's going to be Saudi Arabia. It hasn't been confirmed yet. Maybe the conditional deal. Nick Khan met with Disney earlier this week, and now the reports are the Khans, Tony Khan and his dad, are possibly involved. That's more of a long shot, I would say, but a lot of speculation. I'm just wondering how that talent's feeling back there, to be honest.
You know what, though? You talk about Vince McMahon, and I know Anthony Finkel actually is going to be interested in this, but, I would disagree with you in the fact that it was kind of not expected. I actually think that it was expected because at the end of the day, he still had, in a small twist, if you were following this, he kind of had like the majority of the power to eventually you insert and usurp power from Stephanie McMahon, who was the co-CEO at the time. So I would actually beg to differ and say that he always was kind of lurking here. I think the whole thing here with Saudi Arabia definitely took some people by surprise, but the WWE, from what I've heard from different places, is worth $5 billion, and they also have a TV rights deal that is going up by the end of the year simultaneously with NBC, Universal, Peacock, and Fox, which you see right now with SmackDown. So Vince has got a lot of dollars that he might want to have reasons why to do this now.
You know what? I remember JR saying this in a match. You can't count McMahon out, no matter how hard you work. And it's so true at this point. Like, everyone thought he was down now. He came back. And there's always been the talk of the sale. Like, the talk of Duddy been sold for about, I think, almost 3 years now. The company's going to be sold. I think COVID put things on hold, but I think...
Yep.
I think as well now, listen, their television deals are coming up. What they're going to do. The one thing going to be Vince loves the money. We all know.
Who doesn't at that level? Remember, the Peacock deal happened right before COVID. Don't forget that was the last big deal that happened before COVID. I believe they got $1 billion from that.
Yeah, they got a lot of money. So all these deals are up, and with Saudi Arabia, the thing is, these guys have a lot of money. So But
Sure.
I think that the thing is where they can definitely get the money. Now, company like NBC, Fox, they're going to have to wait till these TV deals. But a friend of mine mentioned me, with them selling to Saudi Arabia, they can keep all these TV deals intact till they expire.
Right, and I would also point out that I know Anthony Finkel's got a bunch of comments here saying that Saudi Arabia now owns the WWE. They don't own the WWE at
No.
the moment. It was actually retracted, and also I had an attorney who's one of our listeners on Sportswire Radio. I won't say who he is. He's actually a prominent attorney in New York. Actually messaged me and tell me that a deal, whether it would be with Saudi Arabia or anybody else, because of different contracts and different legalities, it wouldn't go into effect till a minimum of, I would say, 4 months to 6 months. I mean, so at the end of the day, you can't just all of a sudden magically say, hey, we're going to have a deal and that's it, because of the different contracts. And there's also NDAs out there. And Anthony Finkel also wants to point out that Saudis also launched the LIV Golf League, yes, which took some players away from the PGA. I think we spoke about that briefly on Sportswire. So, I mean, that is a fair point. I mean, what do you think happens with the WWE? I mean, obviously Vince is back. Will he actually go back into creative control? I don't know. How does this impact Triple H? I mean, what's your thoughts on that standpoint of it?
If I'm Triple H, I am looking over my shoulder every second, I guess, because there was a report coming out today saying Triple H had a talent meeting saying, yes, Vince is back, but he is still head of control. Now, we know Vince likes his things his way. So definitely he's going to pre-Triple H. But definitely there is concerns because a lot of these guys Triple H brought, Vince said, I don't need them. Look at Karrion Kross. Look at Bray Wyatt. Look at Hit Row.
I was going to say Hit Row is one of the big ones. Johnny Gargano came back. You saw that as well. And I mean, I don't know.
Definitely some of these superstars are holding their breath, and only time will tell what will happen. But I think the big thing with really taking away focus is now in WWE is their image, because there was a lot of hate for people saying, I'm not going to support WWE with it possibly being sold to Saudi Arabia or not. AEW has a glorious chance right now to re-rectify themselves after the whole CM Punk fiasco in the past summer.
And Anthony Finkel's got a comment about bra and panties, but that's never happening. The WWE is almost no different than Major League Baseball, the NHL, the NFL. That stuff, I hate to break it to you, is never coming back at that level. I hate to disappoint you on that, but I mean, AEW to me, they're openly the alternative to the WWE. I mean, AEW to me is a different product. I mean, I've actually kind of leaned more to AEW in some ways over the past several months. I mean, I watch everything on Sportswire. We cover literally almost every different continent that has wrestling, and we're blessed with that. But I mean, I don't think they're two different things at this point. I don't think the WWE really is in competition with AEW when it comes to that type of product. What's your thoughts on that?
I definitely don't think anymore. A year ago, there was some competition, but AEW definitely has kind of put themselves in a different direction. I think AEW is a little bit more I don't want to sound rude, but AEW definitely isn't as clean as WWE wrestling. You can definitely see the botches. You can definitely see the misses. You can definitely.
They're going for like a hybrid of the old ECW fan, the Ring of Honor fan, with a touch of, let's say, the old WCW remnants.
And I think that's where the concern is. Like, they don't have a feel of their own. I think AEW, they're trying to live in try to get that old school wrestling brought up, which, hey, that was great wrestling, but what as yourself do you identify as a brand? And I don't really can figure out. I just find AEW, if you really want to see some really cool unscripted promos, you want to see some really high fly matches, and definitely you want to see a lot of blood, go watch AEW. But for what they kind of like identify as like their image or their identity, I can't really explain in a few words. It's like a long-winded, or it's pretty much, it's kind of, they want to bring back the old school wrestling, but you can't with the history of concussions. You can't with how injuries are nowadays. And I think that's the problem there.
No, I think, again, ultimately, they've got their own market, and at the end of the day, they get about, I would say, an average between 850,000 to, if they're lucky, 1 million viewers per show. So it's a totally different dynamic. And I want to give a big shout out to Adam Morgan. And I don't think I can say yet what's going to happen with Adam on Sportswire. I'll save it for a few more days. But Adam also wants to tell me Wrestling Society X was better than AEW. It's funny. He's the second person that I've had on Sportswire bring that up. It was Jarrell Diaz who brought up Wrestling Society X, and that goes back. That was the old MTV show. I mean, you agree with that? Actually, I'm going to ask you that because we're talking wrestling on Sportswire, and I get wrestlers after
I
wrestlers that
honestly
come
don't
on.
even remember what Wrestling Society X is, so I can't comment on that.
Okay, all right. Well, I watched a little bit of it. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and Adam can quote me. I think X Pac was actually in that for a couple of years. It didn't run that long, but it did have a market. I mean, but where do you think we go though in terms of, let's say, short term? Let's forget about the business side of the WWE, but let's talk about, we have the Royal Rumble coming up here 2 weeks from now, and Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens are right now in the main event of SmackDown, and we've got a WrestleMania to build. I mean, with all this stuff I know hanging over the WWE, but where does the company on screen go from here, you think?
Short term, the on screen going to be, I think, the big thing now. What's going to happen with The Rock? I think that The Rock, with everything going on, does The Rock really want to get kind of put into this fiasco? Now, I know a lot of people are saying how, I think with Black Marvel or Black Adams, it didn't really do well. Everyone thought, and a lot of people are thinking, oh, if Rock wants to overcome that, he will go to WWE, sign a contract. But I really think with everything going on, The Rock kind of gets thrown in. The Rumble's getting overshadowed, definitely, with everything going on, because that's 2 weeks away. You got Mania that's being really hyped up a couple of months away. So there's definitely still things to look around in. I guess as the weeks go on, we'll see how the booking decisions really go. I think for those who watch the NXT booking on Tuesday between Grayson Waller and Braun Breaker, the ending was a little bit surprising that Triple H.
Yeah, I really thought Grayson Waller was going to come away and finally end Braun Breaker's run. I really was convinced that the way that storyline was going, Grayson was going to one up him. I really believed that.
Yes, and that ending, like that seems like a Vince McMahon ending there, but I guess they maybe want to continue the story. Though, definitely things to keep an eye on. But I would say there's still a lot to be enjoyed with W, even with the sales of the Saudis. It's still an enjoyable product to watch at this time. Now,
I have something I want to add that I actually do believe that is actually going to be a change. I actually think that the Judgment Day are going to get at least one of the tag titles from the Usos, because if you saw the main event in Raw, the Judgment Day are now the number one contenders for the Raw tag team titles, and I kind of think there that we might see the Bloodline relinquish a championship here very soon. That's my thought there on that, Randy. What do you make of that?
I'm kind of opposite because the Bloodlines on both, the Usos are on both shows. Oh, they've been going to both shows for so long. Like, I don't have a problem with holding them both titles as long as they're being defended. I have more of a problem with Roman because he's not defending the title. But I don't think the Judgment Day is gonna win the title.
I don't know. They're gaining steam. I mean, Rhea Ripley, Dominic Mysterio with the jail, and I mean, they're gaining some steam. I mean, they're the kind of group that could use a title. I kind of think that would solidify them. They've really, if you look at them the last couple of months, I mean, they've been one of the reasons why I've been into Raw. And I have a couple of comments here from Adam. And Adam tells me Vampiro and X-Pac were the top few. Yeah, I think I do remember Vampiro in that. And Adam, I don't know if, and I'll say the same for Randy. I actually saw not too long ago the Vampiro documentary, which was a few years back, and I would really recommend it. I would really recommend kind of seeing the journey of Vampiro. And Adam also wants to tell me it was the first time I saw Seth Rollins. An exploding casket match was just a fun show. Wrestling critics be damned, but the entertainment was ahead of its time. If it came during this modern wrestling boom that we've had, it would have done better. I want to follow up with that on something, Randy, because I know everybody's speaking about the WWE, and there's this kind of backlash toward maybe at least the WWE side of things. But there's a point that Adam brought up about the modern day wrestling boom. And I look at things right now, and we cover a lot of wrestling, as I'm sure you're aware of on Sportswire. And I look at AEW. AEW is a legitimate share in the market for professional wrestling. New Japan has marketed themselves in America. Impact Wrestling, I really feel like, has been a rejuvenated product over the past year. And Josh Alexander, their longest running champion, this whole Mickey James storyline, and the Motor City Machine Guns are back, and they held the tag team titles. Moose, I mean, there's a lot of great talent in Impact Wrestling. Look at Major League Wrestling. MLW has been able to get a niche. The NWA with Billy Corgan, and I really do think in a lot of ways that there's a big boom here of wrestling, despite everything that you see here about the WWE. The indie scene, to me, I think is very strong. I mean, so I think in a lot of ways, regardless of what the WWE does, I think that the modern day wrestling boom is going to continue. What's your thoughts on that?
You're absolutely right. If this was maybe 5 years ago, there it really would be kind of people groaning, say, "Gotta watch WWE," or "Oh my goodness, to stop wrestling." But there's so many more valuable wrestling options out there. You have AEW with another big timer. Impact really does not get the credit they deserve. How they
I
treat
enjoy
Cody.
Impact. I got to tell you, Impact has had some great TV. I really think, and I don't want to spoil it because Hard to Kill is going on as we speak, but I've really enjoyed this Bully Ray, Josh Alexander feud. And Mickey James, she's basically wrestling until she has forced to retire. I mean, there's some great storylines there.
No, exactly. Then you got New Japan, who's getting really strong. NWA, all the other ones you just mentioned, the independents. Like there's really a strong vibe for wrestling where there's legitimate second, third options. Where when I was growing up, we didn't have those. We
we didn't have it. We didn't have it.
Maybe Impact, but you didn't really see this. And now there's so many more options where you don't have to commit to one of the companies.
Well,
like I know
how old are you again, if you mind me asking? How
29.
old are you? So you're 29. So basically, you were a wrestling fan after WCW folded, after ECW. So all you really had, if you think about it, if you were growing up, I take it as a wrestling fan in the mid to late 2000s, was WWE, and you had kind of TNA. I think TNA toward the end of the decade, where they got onto Spike TV, they did 1.5 million views. I think one of the Bound for Glory pay-per-views drew 7,000 fans. They were kind of the number two. But now, to me, it's a totally different world. I mean, AEW is a viable market share. I mean, they're doing their next pay-per-view coming up in March, and it's going to sell out, no doubt. And you've got Impact. To me, Impact, again, has been rejuvenated. You look at MLW. You look at the NWA. I mean, you look at all these different companies. We didn't have that. Listen, after WCW and ECW, you had XPW. You had the company in WWA in Australia, but they didn't last. But now you think about it, there is opportunities for wrestlers. And if you want to count Ring of Honor, even Ring of Honor is kind of back. I mean, so there's options. And I think regardless, to me, the moral of what I'm trying to point out here from Adam's comment is that even though, yes, the WWE is going to probably be sold, Vince is probably going to be back creatively, but there are other places for other wrestlers. If they don't want to be in WWE, they'll be gladly taken. I mean, listen, Mandy Rose is an example. I mean, listen, regardless of what happens with a Sami Zayn or these other wrestlers that are under contract and they want to go somewhere else, there's companies out there for them.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just a one-trick pony where I think you go back to the late 2000s where Superstar, they didn't have, like, Impact was kind of booming, but they didn't have the room for it, and you were just hoping I would get a shot.
Impact,
you have those options, and then I think as well, everything overshadowed this week. Mandy Rose came up talking about the situation with herself, and that got overshadowed with the news from WWE.
Well, it's probably a good thing for Mandy Rose. I think that's a good thing for her. I mean, certainly I'm sure that she might actually be looking really smart right now, but we are on Sportswire Radio, and we are speaking all things wrestling here, and some NHL talk in a few minutes with Randy Dillon of the Hockey Fan Chat. You can follow Randy Dillon, Randy, Dillon, on Instagram and Twitter, and my name is the Reverend Tom Bryson. Before I go over to the NHL, anything else on AEW? I really was into the last couple of AEW shows. I've really gotten into this whole storyline with the Acclaimed. I really like the Hangman Adam Page and Jon Moxley opening match. I really like MJF, what he's brought to the table. You got the Jericho Appreciation Society. You've got Darby Allin as the TNT champion. I mean, a lot of things that I kind of have to say from AEW's standpoint, I've really gotten into their last few shows.
They definitely had turned around the show, especially if you go back a few weeks ago where Dash Wilder came out and saying, "Oh, why can't CM Punk and Elite just get along? Why can't they all fix?" And I know that caused them problems there. But listen, their show product on Dynamite has been great. I'm really enjoying the MJF and Bryan Danielson. The Acclaim is just money right now. I know a lot of people were disappointed that Mercedes, aka Sasha Banks, didn't show up on Wednesday, but we'll see what the future holds. But there's a lot of great things happening with AEW. Now, again, some of the booking question decision, like for in the trio match, like they pretty much just gave the title to the other group to hang on. And I wasn't a big fan of Joe dropping the title to Darby Allin. I really thought they were doing something big with him. And I thought they could have done a little bit more story, but overall, it's been a really enjoyable product to watch, I would say. And after the since the CM Punk fiasco.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like I could see the point on Joe because he had the 2 titles. He had the Ring of Honor belt and he had the TNT championship. I think the women's title situation there is very interesting. You've got this whole Dr. Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter situation. You've got Saraya, who I guess is going to be a regular competitor. Then you also have Tony Storm, who was the interim champion. They kind of had that whole situation. There's Sheeta also lurking. I mean, kind of some interesting developments there. I kind of think that the artist formerly known as Sasha Banks kind of would have got lost in the shuffle with that. You've got the Acclaimed, and certainly the Acclaimed have blown up. I mean, you've seen this whole thing with Max Caster and Jeff Jarrett and Billy Gunn, of course, is kind of a part of them, and just props to him. And then you've got the other news here that Sting looks like this is going to be the end of his career because his contract's running out. And I believe I read somewhere, at least it was on Facebook, that this is probably going to be it for Sting.
That's well deserved after what happened in WWE. Listen, we're all mad he didn't beat Triple H at WrestleMania. The injury cut his career short. I'm glad to see he got a final run to the sunset. It's really great to see. And
yeah, I think, and you know what's funny? I had a conversation at a bar Wednesday night with somebody who was a wrestling fan, and they had said, wow, I really didn't think Sting was ever going to even be in the ring again after what happened with Seth Rollins and the fact that he was able to kind of give a second life, and I think also help Darby Allin a little bit. That's for sure. I think was really, really big on his end.
Absolutely. Now, Tom, the one thing I want to end before we transition to the NHL, I just want to say this much. If AEW, when WWE does so, and AEW, when WWE does officially sold, I would be very interested to see if Stephanie McMahon does go to AEW. Now, I know.
Come on.
But hey, Eric Bischoff showed up in WWE. If AEW
but I'm going to tell you the difference. Here's the difference. And I get the whole Eric Bischoff thing. Jeff Jarrett was in WWE after the whole Impact thing. And also we see him now in AEW. It's the McMahon name. I would just be shocked because if Triple H is still working in that company, I mean, the whole situation is bizarre because obviously Vince McMahon's daughter is Stephanie McMahon, right? And she kind of left there and she was also one of the people that kind of voted to basically impose Vince kind of out of the sidelines. Then you've got Triple H, who's the son-in-law, who's kind of involved in this. And then the people that were pushed out were the people that Vince McMahon installed. So, I mean, I don't personally see Stephanie McMahon in AEW. The one thing I will say, coming back to this very quickly, is that I did read like a rumor, which I try not to read the dirt sheets too much because we do have a lot of wrestlers that come on Sportswire, and so some of them are big deals in different places around the world. So I don't want to be seen as a brown noser so much because that'll lose our support on Sportswire. But I read that the Khans actually had some small interest in being one of the investors in the WWE. I mean,
that's a long shot. Like, unless
I don't think Vince would ever sell to the Khans.
Unless they're willing to pay way above market price.
They don't have that kind of money. They don't.
I'm thinking $12 billion for them to get WWE. That's what I'm saying. The asking the price,
and they don't have it because to own an NFL team, that's probably 30 to 40% of your net worth alone, and they own a team, I believe, in one of the football leagues in the UK, and there's almost, to me, no way on earth that I think and Vince, you would have to pry it out of his cold, dead hands. He would never sell it to Khan. He would never. Saudi Arabia, I could definitely see him to it. But let me ask you one more question on that. Anybody else you think that would be a contender to buy the WWE that's realistic?
No, not other than the big ones are NBC.
Obviously, because they have a long-term relationship with them.
Fox and Disney.
Disney, I think, is an interesting one because ESPN, ABC, ESPN has done WWE specials. They have ABC there. They have basically their programming in certain points of the year on the weekends is kind of like their sports coverage is not as big as the other sports networks, let's say Fox or a CBS. I think they would make a lot of sense.
Exactly.
Disney would certainly come into play, but you don't see Warner Brothers maybe by any chance because of Discovery TNT. TNT's made a big share out there.
Those are the Warner Brothers might come later on, but I would say for right now, those are the top four. I would say that are competing for the buying rights for WWE. Like Warner Brothers would have to really come in and really make a deal that's worthwhile.
Well, listen, stranger things have happened. I mean, certainly, I don't know if you remember this, but years ago, ECW was on a little network called the Nashville Network, and everybody was like, what's ECW doing on here? And then a year or so later, the WWE actually went and streamed Raw
Yeah.
for it was about a 4 or 5 year period that they were on TNN. So, I mean, which it became into a different network and such, which I think it became eventually the network that the NHL went on and became a whole
Yeah.
bunch of different networks out there. So I mean, listen, never say never out there. But we have a few minutes here with the NHL, and obviously a couple of stories that come to mind. First is that I think I was saying this with you off the air. The Colorado Avalanche. I mean, what's going on with them? I know they've had a lot of injuries, but I've seen what is it, one win the last 2 weeks, and one of those wins came against another struggling team, the Edmonton Oilers, and that was in overtime. I mean, what do you think is going on with the Stanley Cup champions?
A lot of depth. Remember, they lost a lot of offensive firepower when they won the Stanley Cup. They lost Andre Burakovsky, Nazem Kadri. Gabe Landeskog still hasn't played a game. Vladimir Nikrushkin, they gave a big contract to, has been in and out of the lineup. I don't think Nathan McKinnon's healthy at this point. And it's just been a struggle for them. The defense hasn't played good. I know a lot of Av fans are getting a little fed up with Sam Girard, who was a big part of them for the last few years, and was a big part of the Matt Duchene trade as well. And he's not performing off to quad. So I definitely think the injuries, the lack of depth offensively, and let's be honest, their goaltending has been average at best without the last few years since Semyon Varlamov kind of has left. So I think there has been struggles for the Avs in all departments, and I don't think have the depth to combat it. The Edmonton Oilers, they better get their act together because the expectation for this team is go to a cup final.
And they went to the conference finals last year. That was a big, big deal. I mean, that was.
Yeah. I think they're definitely. I think for them, listen, Stuart Skinner's, I think, has played great, but his game declining. Jack Campbell has to find his game if this team wants any chance to make the playoffs. They definitely need help on defense because they can score some goals.
But I almost feel like in a second with Edmonton, and I'm going to come back to the locals, and I want to give a shout out to Chris Mazzea, who will be with us in about 10 or 15 minutes. We'll go to the NFL, and we'll go into all of that in a second. Wanted to give Randy some more time here because Rob Maraska will be with us in another week or so. He had some issues that he has with under the weather, so we hope Rob feels better. But I mean, you look at Edmonton. I mean, you've got Draisaitl and McDavid, and especially more so McDavid. I mean, this is the best player in the league. He's one of the best players in all of sports, and you pretty much wasted him throughout these years. I mean, he's been in the league, I think, just about 10 years now, and you've really only had that one run to the conference finals and another appearance, a few years prior where you went to round two. I mean, for a player of his stature to really only have had, I guess, that one real team that made a run into the Stanley Cup playoffs deep, and even then they kind of barely got by the Kings. And all right, they beat Calgary, but they didn't show that much against Colorado. I mean, that's really saying a lot there, Randy.
Yeah, Edmonton, the problem is they've never been really well constructive in the McDavid area. We saw Peter Chiarelli made a number of mistakes for this team where they're still suffering for, giving up that first round for Griffin Reinhardt that turned out to be Matt Barzal. Then you have the Milan Lucic trade where they had to trade him to James Neal, buy him out. They gave Andre Sekera a big contract they had to buy out. So a lot of I know people can harsh on Ken Holland, but Ken Holland hasn't made any bad, really awful decisions yet. The Jack Campbell decision, they kind of had to because they needed a goalie. But overall, I think, has done a decent job what he's been given. But when a team's not built right, you're just hoping on the backs of two players. You can't do this anymore in the NHL. You need a strong team. Look at Colorado. Look at the Penguins with you had Crosby and Malcolm, but they had
they had a lot of depth. Those Penguin teams, we're talking about that core that they had really from, I want to say, 08 to maybe 18, 19. No, they were able to continue to have a lot of players that played important roles. I mean, so those teams with depth.
Yeah, and then for Edmonton, this is maybe the first year they've had decent line mates. They've had guys like Evander Kane, unfortunately injury. Zach Hyman, Nugent Hopkins back and forth away. Kyler Yamamoto, the defense. Jesse PVRV is kind of an up and down, but they finally actually have guys that can play on the wing, but they got to get their stuff together because The Seattle Kraken, I think, has really, unless they
I think
have
they've been the story to me of the NHL in a lot of ways. I mean, certainly Boston's had just an amazing run, no question. And Boston, speaking of them, Seattle gives them their first loss at home in regulation. I mean, Seattle, it almost is kind of, I know we didn't get the first year where they had the Vegas-like run, but Seattle's right there in that third spot in that division. And I think they're going to be a playoff team. I really think they're going to be a postseason team. What do you think?
I think they have potential going to the playoff, but they have a lot of guys on that team that won Stanley Cups. You have Andre Burakovsky, Jaden Schwartz, Jeff Schultz, Brandon Tanev, Philip Grubauer. They have got guys that have been playing the playoffs, have a lot of experience. So if the Kraken can get in, we'll see how far they can go. Definitely, Matty Benares has been a big part, but the team has come together, I would say.
They got 7 wins in a row. They've only got 12 losses in regulation. I mean, they're going to be in the postseason. I mean, at this point, you're just over the halfway mark. I mean, from where they are going to be in the postseason. And then just very quickly, because I know Chris has got a comment on the Islanders, and I'll get to them to finish off. But Calgary's just ahead of Edmonton, and right now, Calgary and Edmonton are the last two teams here. But there's obviously games in hand and such, and who knows really. But I mean, I was watching Calgary and St. Louis the other night, and I believe St. Louis beats them in overtime. And Calgary's another team that had kind of a helter-skelter, Jekyll and Hyde-like offseason, and they've had some big regular seasons, but little postseason success, and that team's also under pressure.
That team's under pressure, and with Calgary's failures, when you get rid of 200-point players and only bring them in with kind of a 100-point player, it's hard. Jonathan Huberdeau definitely underperformed, but Daryl Sutter, some of his coaching, I was at a few of the games when I was in Calgary, and Milan Lucic on that second line just doesn't make sense to me. He's not bad. He wasn't doing much. I know he's put some goals up the last few games, but definitely he shouldn't be in your top 6. So coaching decisions, the bad play of Jacob Markstrom, I think at this point they have to run Dan Vidar for the rest of the season if they want to stay in a playoff spot. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of questions for Calgary because, listen, Jonathan Huberdeau's contract kicks in next year, and that's a big cap hit of $10.5 million for a guy who might only get 60 to 70 points.
That is a lot of money for a 60 to 70 point player. And again, that is a franchise that has had very limited success in the postseason themselves, only winning the postseason series last year against Dallas. Otherwise, these last few postseasons, they've come dry here. And Justin Gianelli also wants to remind me, puck time just about in California. Let's go Devils. Devils seemed as if they have turned around the corner a little bit here the past 10 or so days. And Chris has a question, which I kind of was saving for the last few minutes here, was about the struggling New York Islanders, who I think right now, and I had somebody message me while I'm on the air, and I won't say who, they do a podcast that they're friends of ours on Sportzwire that basically said kind of what I thought after watching the game yesterday, and frankly, even the game against Dallas, that the Islanders are done. But Chris here has a question for you. Is there a move that the Islanders can make to improve the very, very struggling power play unit to make a legit run for the playoffs and the cup? I mean, how do you want to answer that?
I don't. If the Islanders are going to make a move to really improve their team in a big one, it's going to have to wait to the offseason because like I said, there is contracts on that team that are hard to move. You have Kyle Palmieri, who it's not a big cap hit, but he has a full no trade clause. Pajot, again, he has a modified no trade clause. A lot of these players have the flexibility to make trades, so it's not like you can trade a player in a, like I would think like a guy for them who I think would definitely help them would be a Bo Horvat, a second line center who's having a great year, can take some pressure off Barzell in the center. But again, you have to get rid of some of your contracts you have, and
who are you giving up for a Bo Horvat?
Exactly. So they're definitely like, do you want to really part way with a Noah Dobson, who's really found his stride this year? Like the Islanders are really in a tough situation where the last few years they have given up a lot of picks and prospects to get players like Palmieri, to get players like Pajot to really help them, and they don't have those picks to kind of recoup those assets, recuperate. And again, those contracts are really struck. And the Islanders we talked about could have a Jekyll and Hyde season, but they're going down. The special teams have been killing them. Like last game,
Well, yeah, yesterday is a perfect example. You're on a power play and give up a shorthanded goal, and the week prior you're on a power play and give up a shorthanded goal. And it's a team that's like 3 for their last like 8,000 on the power play. I mean, no joke. I mean,
there definitely struggles there, and Ilya Sorokin, like he's getting bombarded at this point, but
he's playing every game practically because Varlamov is been injured. I mean,
he's been injured. He came back. That game against Calgary wasn't a great start for him, and they're like the Islanders. I don't know if they can turn around because we talked about it. This is a team when they need every player to get going. They had that going.
Right, and the old adage is they need all of their players to play above their weight or above the stats on the hockey card. Yeah. You're not really getting that. So, I mean, yes, Barzal has played better from a goal standpoint, but the rest of that team, and I continue to say it, I think they're all very similar players, whether it's Bailey, whether it's Lee, Palmieri, Pajot. Beauvillier is an okay player, but a lot of these players that they have, they're not the superstar core. And yes, I mean, you're not going to give up Dobson. I mean, Adam Pelech is coming back. I don't think that makes that much of a difference. I mean, Ryan Pulock at times has given you that power play ability to take a long shot. But, I mean, when Scott Mayfield is your only offense yesterday, I mean, and he also took a kind of a silly penalty and turned the puck over, which cost them pretty much the game there. I mean, you're not going to win in this league. And especially with the Rangers and your Capitals playing very well and the Devils are improved, I really think that the Islanders are in big trouble. And I think Pittsburgh has 3 games in hand on them as well.
Yeah, Pittsburgh have 3 games in hand. They were losing 4-1 to Winnipeg, so that's good news for Islanders. But still, they have a big game against Montreal tomorrow, and the Canadiens can definitely score. Then you have that big divisional game on Monday against the Capitals. Like, if the Islanders lose those next 2 games, I would have to say they'll need a really strong run, an improbable strong run to make the playoffs because they'll be 9 points behind Washington, depending on what happened to Washington.
If you broke the season down in 2 halves in the first half, Islanders were 14-8. Second, they're 8-10-3. So what that tells you is that in that run, the Islanders seem to be playing more like the team they kind of were last season. So it tells you that this team's in trouble.
And the one thing I want to add there, Thomas Bryce, is what I've noticed under Lane Lambert is this team's not as structurally defensive they were under Barry Trotz. They are a little bit more offensive. They get more chances, but they give up a lot more chances that really forces guys to give. Sorokin had to be.
But that was the whole point. I mean, Lane Lambert was to come in and be this offensive guru, but you didn't really have the personnel. And the Islanders won't. In my mind, the Islanders won with Trotz. 19 best regular season in almost 30 plus years. 20-21, get to the conference finals. 7th game in 21, lose it 1-0 on a shorthanded goal, I believe, early in the game. And 22, I mean, listen, they played their first 1,000,000 games on the road. And last question before I get to closing thoughts from Chris: if they miss the playoffs, is Lou out? I don't know.
I don't know if Lou is going to be out at this point. I think the pressure is on Lou to do something definitely this offseason more than anything if the Islanders miss, because the East is only getting better. Like, we saw the merge of the Devils. Who knows what happened to Philly if they get Connor Bedard? The Rangers are still going to be up to the Hurricanes. They're still going to.
How about Buffalo? Buffalo's a very competitive team this year.
Been good. Like, the East has not been easy.
And Ottawa's not a pushover like they were the past few years. I mean, they were like 50-point teams the last few years. Ottawa's 500 right now, I believe.
So I definitely think this offseason, if the Islanders do miss, I got to believe Lou might have to make a panic move where he has to overpay for a player in the offseason, or he's going to have to.
You know what it is? I hate to cut you up, but Lou's, to me, not a panic guy. He's not a panic guy.
And here's the other thing. The Islanders don't have much money coming off the books, and Matt Barzal's extension's kicking in. That's a big extension, so there's going to be money. Like, how are you going to get rid of this money to create?
And that's a franchise. I know that we got the new building. I know Ledecky's come in there with Malkin, but, people don't go to the Islanders. Big free agents don't go there, and they still have that stigma. And I don't know. I mean, the Islanders might be kind of
And
what they are.
And with the Rangers doing good, people might decide to go more of the Rangers than the Devils at this time. You have those options. So.
Well, the Devils, I think, are the interesting one because the Devils have a young core there, and the Devils, I think, if just goaltending is going to be the key here. And Justin says, I get that he had a track record all these years in New Jersey, but he can't keep getting pass. Well, he led them to the listen. He's got the 2 conference finals under his belt, so he's going to get the pass. He might get one more year of a pass, and the age is an issue would be the big one.
I would say this is it for Lou. If Lou this offseason, if Lou is going to be under the hot seat because
if they miss the playoffs, yeah, he's definitely under the hot seat.
Because like I thought last year, like they could have used this excuse. Listen, we had that 12-game road trip to start the year. We had to play games undermanned for COVID, so they kind of had it. The Islanders kind of had excuses last year where they could have brought everyone back, but they decided to say, "Hey, if we get rid of Trotz, we would be better," and that backfired. So now it's like,
oh, no question, it absolutely did. I mean, listen, and they kind of were like, "Well, we'll stand pat, we'll change coaches," but to me, Trotz wasn't the problem. They won with Trotz. They won with the guy. The guy leads them to 2 conference finals. I even heard on your show, maybe if Lavaliette's in doo-doo, go back to Trotz. That's my point. Trotz has won. Everywhere he's gone, this guy has won, and they get rid of him. And it's a franchise that has struggled to have legitimate head coaches. Capuano, they had Wade. I mean, Laviolette was maybe the one exception early in his career, but they've just never had real head coaches. They have one, and they let him go. Let him go.
Exactly. So I think like Lou's definitely going to be under the gun, and the fan base there. Even last summer, there was heat towards Lou from the Islander fan base. It's going to get more and more. So
listen, Lou is something about Lou, and I'm going to say it before we get to closing thoughts here about Lou. To me, I hate the whole clean cut thing, as you can see. So I kind of want to get through with the Yankee thing, and also he mentions Ted Nolan. Yeah, but Ted Nolan was like years after he had that success in Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe did Ted Nolan lead them to the postseason the last time? I know
Capuano. I think Capuano was the last one to lead them.
Yeah, but I mean, he was very much. I mean, he was. Islander fans and his coaching. I mean, was. I mean, his record was okay, but those teams probably underachieved and underperformed, especially some of those last teams, even the teams that won in 15 and 16 that went to the postseason. I mean, they really were not good teams in regulation into overtime, and that's kind of carried through here. But Randy, we're going to obviously transition here in a second to the NFL, and this was fun. I enjoyed some wrestling and NHL, so a lot of fun. We'll do it again next week. I like having an opener, so we'll enjoy that from you, hopefully, in the future once again. But I want to give you the floor. Anything else you want to plug, share, say, and fire away here, my friend.
Thanks, Tom. Always great to be on the show. Hope you guys enjoy the football talk, because I know the playoffs are starting this week. It's fun times. But before I go, we're hoping to have a new hockey fan chat coming up here soon in the next few weeks. I really want to talk to either a Vancouver Canuck fan, or I'll try to rearrange with that Vegas fan. Unfortunately, due to tech issues,
Vegas would be a good one, especially with the way they played.
Exactly. There's a lot of questions on that team, and they're getting an outdoor game, and I'm wondering how that's going to work. So we'll talk about that for sure. But follow me on Twitter at Randy Dillon, DHILLON, and same with Instagram, and follow us on our Facebook page, The Hockey Fan Chat.
Excellent stuff there, Randy, and we'll definitely keep an eye out on that. And everybody follow Randy on Twitter and Instagram, and we'll definitely see what happens in the wrestling world next week. I'm excited because we'll be a little closer to the Royal Rumble, some AEW with MJF, and this whole thing with Chris Jericho and the losing streak, and maybe some other things we'll get into, but we'll see. I don't think the WWE will be sold, but we'll definitely talk about it next week, my friend.
Sounds good, Thomas. Take care. Enjoy.
All right, and that was Randy Dillon here of the Hockey Fan Chat, and we're joined by, I think, one of the trio that's going to be here on Sportswire Radio to get us ready for the NFL, and he's here with us with his NFL Jacksonville Jaguars jersey. I think he'll probably tell us why in a second. We're here with 2/3 of the gang. The brute force Brad Weiss will be here probably whenever he gets out of the gym, as he messaged us. So, unfortunately, when you're a basketball coach, who knows really if this guy's even got a voice. We'll see. Could also be because John Gonzalez won the group here for our Sportswire Radio NFL picks. He doesn't want to show his face, but we are joined by here Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter, and the man who does the Talking Rivals and the Liftoff Jets for us, Mr. Chris Pizzea. And gentlemen, happy Super Wild Card weekend, and how you guys doing tonight?
Doing good. Doing good, ready to rock and roll.
Absolutely, have a lot to talk about here in the NFL, and we'll get to the wild card games in a few minutes. And I want to give a big shout out to somebody I believe that is listening, a big football fan. In fact, she is a Los Angeles Chargers fan. Her name is Anastasia Rasnia. Anastasia has become a big fan of us on Sportswire, and she said she wanted to give me a big mention, and I will promise to do that. Also, we'll talk about her when it comes to the Chargers and Jaguars later, but a lot to get into here. And first, I wanted to talk about some of the firings here in the NFL. A couple, I guess, weren't to be surprised, and others, I guess, with Lovie Smith in Houston, I guess a little bit surprising. And just give me some of your thoughts, guys, on some of the NFL coaching vacancies, and I'll go with Justin first.
Yeah, I think there's not really many surprises here. There's only 5 openings this year.
Yep.
That's after the news that Sean McVay announced that he will return in
Mm-hmm.
2023. The Kingsbury, that was to be expected. Obviously you had the 3 coaches fired mid-season, Matt Rule, Nathaniel Hackett, and Frank Reich. So those jobs were all open as well. And then the Lovie Smith firing, which to me didn't really make sense. But, I feel like after the whole Brian Flores thing last year, they kind of just gave him the job because the reports kept coming out how serious they were about hiring former quarterback Josh McCown as their head coach. So, but I don't know what you expected from Lovie Smith when the team was absolutely horrendous. So, I mean, David Culley had no shot last year. Lovie Smith had no shot, and yet you're firing these 2 guys after 1 year. It didn't really make much sense. The other jobs were pretty clear cut. Time to move on. Time to get started. Looking for a new guy, especially in Arizona. And I found it interesting that the owner, because remember they let go of the GM too, Steve Keim, and Kyler Murray is apparently going to have a lot of say on. He's going to have input on the next head coach, which I think is a little ridiculous. You really shouldn't be consulting your players. I get it. He's your quarterback. He's your most important player, but leave the players out of it. That's my thinking with Arizona.
Fair enough. And anything you want to add on that, Chris? Obviously, Kingsbury out in Arizona. We kind of predicted that for a couple weeks. I mean, Lovie Smith, we didn't see. Denver, I think we spoke about with Hackett a couple weeks back. Maybe Sean McVay with the Rams, we didn't know. Maybe the indications were kind of maybe he was not going to come back and I guess temporarily retire. But anything else? Maybe Sean Payton want to talk about if he comes back? Oh, maybe that's a good maybe segue to go different. What's your thoughts on that?
I think Sean Payton is just waiting for the right team to join. I don't think he's going to join a team that has no shot right now, like say the Texans. I don't think he wants to do a rebuild. I think if the Chargers, are one and done here in the playoffs, maybe they'll move on from him and bring in Payton. That's a possibility. But where else would Sean Payton want to go? Does he really want to go to Denver with that whole mess with Russell Wilson? I don't know. But they do have a good team. So Denver's not a bad spot. It's just, what are you going to get out of Russell Wilson? Is he done, or is that just a product of the system and the quarterback? I mean, and the coach and all that? I don't know. But the one, of course the Texans made no sense. Back-to-back years after 1 year.
They played competitive in the second half. I mean, Billy McInerney was spot on. They won some games. They were right in a couple games. I mean, he did the best he could, and that was a no-win situation. At least they won a couple of games.
No coach was winning games there. So, and he actually, like you said, competitive for most of the year. I mean, they weren't really that bad. They just didn't win because a quarterback, had nothing there. So, and the one other interesting one is Harbaugh. Is he going to jump from Michigan?
Carolina? Yep, that's the one, right?
Carolina, or maybe even Denver. I heard Denver. If Denver offered him the job, he would be all over it. So
Well, let me ask you guys both this question on Sean Payton, and I have a couple other things I want to get to. Obviously, the Jet news here. Mike LaFleur is out, and I'm actually really prepared on the NFL this week, so we have some time, and we'll be able to go around the league and such. But, I mean, Carolina is an interesting situation because they're in a division that I think is very winnable. We have no idea what's going to happen with Brady in Tampa Bay and what's to make of that situation. I mean, for you guys, wouldn't Sean Payton maybe want to consider a situation like Carolina? He's familiar with the division. You probably have a better path to return to the postseason. Maybe you win a couple games. I mean, that doesn't seem like it's a long-term rebuild there. What do you guys think on Carolina with Sean Payton?
I think if he's able to get his quarterback in there, the question is who is he going to want to play quarterback, right? You got multiple guys on the roster, but you really don't have a quarterback, right?
Right.
You still have, you're gonna have PJ Walker there. You have Sam Darnold there. Although I think Sam Darnold might be a free agent after the year anyway. So, they're deep in the mix for a quarterback. And who is Sean Payton going to want to work with? Would he want to work with Russell Wilson? I don't know about that. The other situations don't seem tenable for him, and I kind of disagree with Chris. I don't think the LA Chargers are even with if they lost to Jacksonville. I don't think they're going to get rid of Staley. The only team I could see getting rid of their coach this weekend would be McCarthy in Dallas, because Jerry Jones might see, and that's where Jerry Jones might push for Sean Payton.
But does he want to deal with
opens.
But does he want to deal with him? That's the big thing. Like, does Sean Payton want to deal with Jerry Jones? Because Jerry Jones likes to get involved.
Now, was Payton on the staff with Parcells in Dallas?
Yes,
Was he on that staff?
Yeah, he's the offensive coordinator.
So he's going to have a relationship there with the owner already. So he's going to.
That's why there's a natural connection.
But
I'm not so sure Peyton fits in Carolina, though. Back to the main point that you brought up.
Okay. I just wanted to throw that out there because I thought that would be an intriguing situation. It was a team that played well in the second half. They're in a division that, again, could very well be very, very winnable. And we saw it with Doug Peterson in Jacksonville. I know we had Trevor Lawrence, but there is a path there. And then let's go over to some of the Jet news here. I've got a bunch of different things on my agenda here, so I feel this would be a good time here before we – it's a big topic here. Woody Johnson had some comments here this past week, and he had felt that the team is loaded and ready to go, and he kind of says he's ready to spend on a quarterback, but also the news here is that Mike LaFleur is out. Some other coaches here as well are out. And I mean, what's your thoughts here on the exit here as the Jets season? It was better than last year, but certainly it's a bitter taste in a lot of Jets fans' mouths because you lost the last 6 games here to finish 7-10 and out of the postseason. I'll go with Justin first, then Chris.
I would have preferred to have kept everybody, or either kept everybody or gotten rid of everybody. I don't like these partial changes. I mean, what does it really do? I mean, it's such a tough situation to bring in an offensive coordinator into year 3 of Robert Saleh when, yes, maybe Woody Johnson didn't say it, but you damn well know he's thinking that if they don't make the playoffs next year, Robert Saleh is out. That's
probably Douglas too.
So the coordinator could be a one and done. So that makes it a tough situation for anybody coming in, because if they don't have success next year, that coordinator is back on the unemployment line. So it's a tough situation. And I heard today that there's a possibility, speaking of LaFleur, there's a possibility he joins Sean McVay in LA and becomes the Rams offensive coordinator. But so that'd be good for him. But as for the Jets, I mean, I know people have talked about Greg Olson, not the former tight end.
I saw that in the post. Yep, I saw that in the post today.
And why that would be big is he's got a big relationship with Derek Carr from the days in Oakland/Vegas. So, Derek Carr might be the Jets' top target at quarterback this offseason.
Well, I mean, we got to get somebody,
which I have no problem with.
Well, we got to get somebody. We can't have Mike White the starter. Joe Flacco's got to go retire. And I want to give a shout out before I get to Chris for somebody who's going to be my guest next week, who I didn't even realize is a football fan. And why are you up? That is, of course, pro wrestling star Young Horace, who's a Denver Broncos fan. And I mean, how did you become a Denver Broncos fan all the way in England? Did the Broncos play in London in the past? I'm trying to think. Maybe they played there once. I mean, how did you become a Broncos fan? That's my question to you. We're joined here with the Brute Force, Brad Weiss, but we'll get to your thoughts, Brad, on the Jets in a second. But, I mean, Chris, obviously a lot of decisions for this Jet team. I mean, Woody Johnson, in his words, says, I don't do mandates. I'm sure you and Sharma are going to speak about it this weekend. We'll play it, and Mike LaFleur is out. Some other coaches were out as well. I mean, offensive line coaches also out. But, I mean, where does this Jet team go from here now that we have the longest playoff drought, 12 straight seasons, and it's a franchise that definitely ended the season with the whimper? I mean, where do the Jets go from here now?
Yeah, you know what? It's going to be hard. On top of what Justin's saying, there's no playoff mandate, but he did say he wants to see an improvement. So the only improvement is making the playoffs, right? I mean, they won 7 games, so a couple more wins should get them in the playoffs, right? That's what happened this year. So obviously there's no playoff mandate, but there is a playoff mandate. So, and here's the other thing. How are you going to hire a coordinator if you don't even have a quarterback yet, right? I mean, are you really enticing a coordinator to say, come and fix our number 1 pick that has looked really bad in these 2 years? No, they need someone like Carr. I think Carr is a perfect guy, but I shouldn't say perfect guy, but he's probably the best option that we're going to have because I don't think Lamar Jackson's going to cost us a boatload of picks.
And he's out again.
I wouldn't touch Lamar Jackson with the 10-foot pole. He's a glorified running back who's an average passer. He's always hurt.
Right.
And he's gonna cost you multiple your next 3 future drafts to get him.
And
then you got to pay him all that money that Baltimore doesn't want to pay him.
And we need our picks this year because we have more than just a quarterback hole now. We got guys that we have to resign or figure out. So we need our draft picks.
Offensive line immediately.
Right. And we don't have the cap space like we've had. Coming into the offseason, I think we got like $15 million.
Well, they're good. There's ways that they can get creative.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to cut guys. Corey Davis. There's a couple of guys.
There was a model of the Jets roster and between cutting guys and restructuring to.
It's definitely going to happen
where they can have over $60 million of cap space.
Right.
All of a sudden, the cap space is back. So, I mean, there's definitely ways to maneuver it, but. To kind of counter your point, though, about the offensive coordinator, I think it's kind of easier to bring him in with a blank slate because then you bring in the new quarterback and
but there's no guarantee what quarterback you're bringing in. You know what I mean? It's nice to say, oh, we're gonna go after Derek Carr, right?
Yeah.
You don't think we're the only team that's going to be going after Derek Carr? There might be other teams that say, hey, you know what? I want the Colts. We can name about 4 or 5, 6 teams.
I would say at least more than I could even say 7, maybe.
Right.
New England, Miami could be out there. I mean, there's a number of teams, and we're here with the Brute Force. And before I get to the Brute Force, Young Horace has a response to me about his Broncos. He says, I wasn't lucky enough to watch them in London. Yeah, I thought they did play in London a few years back, but I've been a fan since I enjoyed the logo playing NFL Street as a kid. I prefer American football to European. Just a shame my favorite team has no offensive line at the minute. Yeah, it's kind of a shame with the Broncos that everybody thought this was going to be a team that was going to be a premier team in the AFC West. And we are joined here. I will see how much of a voice he has, the Brute Force, Brad Weiss. And good to be with you, the Brute Force. Obviously, we'll get to the NFL picks in a second. But Jets finished the season with a whimper as kind of expected, although we picked them the last 2 weeks, and they definitely let us down, especially last week's game in Miami. I mean, what an atrocious game to watch. But Jets do go 7-10, own the longest playoff drought in the NFL, 12 straight seasons. Our owner, Woody Johnson, had a couple of different thoughts, and quarterback is certainly on the agenda. Mike LaFleur is out. Some other coaches were out as well. I mean, so the Brute Force, I mean, where does this Jets team go from here now in year 3 under Robert Saleh?
Yeah, well, first of all, let's make this clear, Tom Bryce. They let you down in week 18. They did not let me down. All right.
You picked them.
I picked the Dolphins because I did not want the Steelers to make the playoffs. And they did their job, all right? They stunk it up. All right, they let Skylar Thompson beat them. So they did not let me down. Let's make that clear, all right? The Steelers.
Well, they let me down regardless.
All right, so the Steelers not in the playoffs. That's exactly what I wanted, so that's fine. But in regards to the Jets, I've definitely questioned the Mike LaFleur firing. I didn't really understand it. because like I heard Justin say it before, these single man firings, I don't exactly like them. When you fire one guy and then you keep the rest of the staff. I mean, it wasn't like, again, LaFleur, was he that great? No, I'm not going to go out there and defend him. But at the same time, what did he have to work with? He had Zach Wilson, who stunk. He had Joe Flacco, who stinks.
I hope he retires. I seriously hope we never see him again.
You got Mike White, who, we prayed and went on our knees that he would save us. But he was never the guy who anyone thought was going to do anything this season. So, you get rid of LaFleur. And, the reason why I thought why they were going to keep LaFleur was because of their interest in Jimmy G. I thought that Jimmy G was going to be the next guy coming in here with Saleh and the San Francisco staff. I do think that a move like this says that maybe Jimmy G is not the guy on the radar. And as Chris Bizzea said, maybe it's Derek Carr or somebody else who they are looking at as the next guy to come in here as a veteran. So, it's going to be interesting to see who they hire now. Let's just hope they hire somebody competent and not one of these guys who we've heard in the past we don't even know who they are, or like an Adam Gase type guy. Let's hope it's not that type of guy. Ultimately, I got to trust the Jets at the moment in regards to hiring an offensive coordinator. But the most important thing is quarterback. We have to address the quarterback position. And until they do that, I can't be satisfied because we all know that the reason why we're sitting here and not in the playoffs, Tom Bryce, is because of the quarterback position.
And I think with the Jets, there was definitely a very winnable path. There was a path there to make the postseason this year because if you look at the teams, Miami basically limped in there, and Baltimore limped in there. The Chargers were okay this year, but there was definitely, compared to these teams, whether it was, of course, my beloved Pittsburgh Steelers and the Raiders who hung in there for a while, and these different teams, New England. The Jets, they were talent-wise right there with them, and they should have arguably made the postseason. I think that's why it's a disappointing season here, nonetheless, regardless of the 3-game improvement. And Salah's 11-23 in the 2 years, so he's definitely under the microscope. This team has to win at least 9 games, or at least 9 or more, and that'll get you into the postseason. And also a few other news and notes here in the NFL before we go over to the picks and see the final standings. That Atlanta is the site for the AFC Championship game. Should the Bills and Chiefs be the 2 teams that'll be in that? Everybody think that's okay? Everybody's fair with that? Or
I don't like it.
Tell me why.
Because you got 2 cold weather teams like the Chiefs and the Bills, and you're going to put them indoors. Now, it's going to make for a nice, fun track meet if those teams meet in a game, because those teams can go up and down the field with the best of them. But I don't know. I would have liked it in Pittsburgh. Acrisure Stadium's a very nice stadium. Cleveland, First Energy Stadium's a very nice stadium. You could have even put it at Nissan Stadium in Nashville. I would have been a good one.
I would have liked that.
I would have liked it outdoors. I would have liked the elements because you would have had the elements at Arrowhead Stadium.
Yeah, I don't know there. For you guys, I see, Brad, you're kind of like on the fence. Matter to you at all, or what do you think?
Honestly, it's just it's due to an unfortunate situation. I'm not exactly mad at the NFL for making this decision. It's not really. It's one of those things that was kind of uncontrollable for them. Sure. Because of what happened to Damar Hamlin, obviously, and the fact that they couldn't reschedule that game, that they had to make these type of decisions. But ultimately, yeah, I'm not reading into it too much. In regards to location, I know that it could be kind of centrally located for both teams to kind of meet in the middle. And it is a nice stadium in Atlanta. And at least the team that's not dumb will play in there at some point. Because the dumbest team plays there normally. So I do think it's okay. I'm not going to read into it too much. Definitely hell no to Pittsburgh. Please. Listen, they need to be out of the playoffs.
But they're both cold. But they're both cold weather cities. There's a point to be made that would.
I get Justin's point. I get it, but at the same time,
the fact that they're taking it away from Arrowhead, I understand it's an uncontrollable situation, but I also think that they should have put it in an outdoor setting.
I get it, and I get Justin's point. But again, what I would say, and I'll see what Chris says, is that I'm not really reading into it too much. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Both teams are going to get to play in this nice stadium, so it's not like someone has an advantage over someone else. So I think that, again, I'm not reading into it. And again, it's just unfortunate that we were even in this situation because of the Warren Hamlin situation.
Right.
Any thought, Chris? What do you think? You think
I just think, you know what? There was no perfect ending to this. There was no perfect spot where it'd be like, okay, this is great. Yeah, I think it would have been great in the outdoors too, because we would love to have seen, maybe if it was getting a little colder, maybe a little snow, that would have been awesome. But I think also too, this is the safest location, right? It's in a warm weather place. It's in a dome. Weather's not going to, affect the game. It's not going to affect any traveling for the teams or even fans coming in. Like you said, it's almost, I guess it's centrally located between the two. I don't know if that's exactly central, but it's pretty close probably, right?
Yeah, I think, Buffalo to Atlanta, Kansas City to Atlanta.
It's probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, there's
like
plenty of flights to Atlanta, too, so I'm sure that...
Right.
Because, it's funny you said that, because if you've been following, so many people have had problems with flights over the past month or so. It's just been like a really, really big issue.
I don't think they wanted to get into that,
let's
just get it here
And I want to give a shout out to Carlos Otoro Chavez II, who chimes in here before we move on to get to the picks here, and maybe the Brute Force will give us the final standings. Some teams do worse on natural grass. That's a fair point. Certainly that is a very, very fair point. And also wanted to go over a few other news and notes around the league. I have some stuff for the playoff games. But this is the first time in NFL history we have 5 first-year coaches in the playoffs. We have Doug Peterson in Jacksonville, worst to first in the division. First time that was done since way back the 2008 Miami Dolphins, when Tony Sparano was the coach and Chad Pennington was the quarterback. They went from 1-15 to 11-5, just a remarkable turnaround.
Wow.
Brian Daboll with the Giants, 4-13 to 9-7-1, and this one's an asterisk. But Todd Bowles, of course, with the Buccaneers, and they kind of won that very weak division. They're at 8-9. We had Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins, who basically limped into the postseason, beat the Jets, and kind of made it. And then Kevin O'Connell with the Vikings, as the Vikings went from 8-9 last year to 13-4, although they had a minus differential in points. So that's the first time, and that beat the record, which was in 1997, and there was 4 first-year coaches that made it. One of them was Jim Fossil, the late Jim Fossil, God rest his soul, with the Giants. Giants had won the NFC East that year. Steve Mariucci, who's an NFL Network guy who was way back with the 49ers. They were 13-3 that year and went to the NFC Championship game. Bobby Ross with our beloved Detroit Lions. And Bobby Ross kind of gets lost in the shuffle a bit, because Chris will probably remember this. He was a national champion in college, tied with Georgia Tech.
Right?
Georgia Tech. And then with the Chargers, actually led them to the Super Bowl. And he had some success with the Lions. He was one of those college coaches that actually did transition into the NFL, and he did okay. Kind of a guy that gets lost in the shuffle a bit. He was one of those coaches. And the other coach, which is still coaching remarkably now, Pete Carroll, who actually led the Patriots to first place in the AFC East that year, where Drew Bledsoe must have threw like 10,000 times that year, but they went 10-6, and they had got to the postseason and beat Dan Marino and the Jimmy Johnson-led Miami Dolphins that year. So that was kind of a good stat to note. And Saints also had 10 losses for the first time since 2005. So that was another good stat to note. And also, wild card weekend coming up here before we get to our games. Every team has played each other in the regular season. That's the first time that has happened on wild card weekend since 2009, and that was when our Jets were in the postseason. Jets Bengals, and the other times that happened was 2004. That was also when the Jets were in the postseason. Jets Chargers, I believe, that was when the Chargers kicker, if I'm not mistaken, missed like 2 gimme field goals. If I think that was the game. And then 1994, which I had no recollection of, and 1992 with the others. So that was some other notes there. I have some other stats we'll get into, but also want to get to a few comments in here. Also, Carlos says that he's having issues with his phone, but he wants to give out some picks. So let's do that first before we get to our picks. Carlos here wants the Miami Dolphins in an upset. Boy, he might be the only person doing that. He's got the Vikings. He's got the Chargers. All right, that's kind of a hot pick. He's got the 49ers, and he's got the Bengals, but he doesn't have a game for the Bucks and the Cowboys. So maybe we'll come back with that. He's missing that one. Yep. And then Anthony Finkel, the napkin Anthony Finkel, is with us here in the house. He says, "What's up, fellas?" The napkin Anthony Finkel. Well, I said it in my video announcing John Gonzalez as the winner, the napkin Anthony Finkel. But the Brute Force, before we get to our picks, I see that you've got the standings here on the screen, and I'm wondering where
That's
John
clear.
Gonzalez is of the Sports Authorities Group. You do
Yeah, you
have
can
it here
actually
very
see it.
clear. And for those that are listening and watching this on Sportswire Radio, tell us who won formally and how it all broke down.
Yeah, so first of all, you guys can see it. I've been working hard, all right, to make sure you can see it. All right?
I think it was your
Change the
mother. I think
background,
it
change the lighting. I did a whole bunch of things.
I think your mother did that more than you. That's just my.
Oh, don't give her credit for that. All right, you give her credit for other things, but not this. All right, this is me. All right, but ultimately, the unfortunate circumstance came to fruition, ladies and gentlemen, and John Gonzalez did win the regular season Pick'em championship, as we all didn't want to happen. I tried. The one thing you can't see is the little trophy emoji that's there. I don't know if you can see it.
I can see it.
I did put it there.
Yeah, I see it. I see it on top. Yep.
Yeah, to kind of, be nice to John Gonzalez. All right. But ultimately, he did win. I was rooting for Finkel. I will say I was rooting for Finkel, but John held on. The one thing I want to say, Tom, and I think this is a major accomplishment, is that all of us who did pick every game this season did not get 100 losses. All of us avoided the 100 loss mark. So that is an accomplishment, as you can see.
Yeah, we all had a winning percentage over 600. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, so we know our stuff, ladies and gentlemen. But unfortunately, John did win, and I'm going to have to hear it. But it's okay. All right, next season we might have to make it a little harder with adding the spreads. All right, but ultimately, John's the winner this year, and I can't say anything bad today about it.
166 and 84, and he was almost wire to wire, and he won just about 2/3 of his games here at Anthony Finkel, who's called a Big Fink, and he actually is called Big Fink by a lot of people that know him in Ditmas Park and Kensington and Flatbush and other parts of Brooklyn. So that's how I kind of knew him years ago. So, I mean, you must have stole my name from that. And you're right there. You finished at 156 and 94. Chris at 155. And I'm at 152. And Justin was at 151. So we're all pretty much bunched up. So at the end of the day, it was a lot of fun. And Joey Bostrom was, I guess, half the season, 121 and 71. Why do you have Billy McInerney? He only picked like 4 weeks, 37 and 19.
He still did well in those weeks, so we got to give him credit.
Well, he didn't win anything. He wasn't going to win with only 37 wins. But Anthony Finkel here does have some comments. He says John Gonzalez is the Brute's arch nemesis. Clearly. He also says that this was a fun competition. Let's do it again next season. Absolutely. Very, very much looking forward to that. And I was speaking with John off the air, and maybe we'll add different things to it. That's a great point, the Brute Force. Maybe we'll add the spread. I don't know about over and under. That's a little trickier, but maybe spread. Depends on how many people join us. But definitely congratulations to John Gonzalez of the Sports Authorities Group. And if you do like what you hear from the Sports Authorities Group, you can follow them on Facebook at the Sports Authorities Group, where most of us are either moderators or regularly are in the group. And they've been big supporters of us here on Sportswire Radio. And they've helped us grow because our page on Facebook is well over 500 followers now. And certainly the Sports Authorities Group is a big part to that. So a lot of our shows get a lot of views, really in part because of John Gonzalez and his group. So we definitely want to congratulate John. I'm kind of waiting for a John comment or two here. Maybe he's kind of digesting this. Well, nope, there he goes. Speak of the devil here. John Gonzalez says, "Bow to your master, Brute. Ordain me with your crown."
Wow.
Oh God. Okay. All right, John. You know what? This is your moment, John. All right. This is your night, your day, your time. All right. We're gonna give you your flowers. All right. Congratulations, John. Excellent job, John.
Wow, the Brute Force. I mean, this is really like, I mean, you have to be holding it in here. I mean, this would be almost like if we had to say on air about something about SJC Brooklyn winning it, which I'm going to get to later on with a big asterisk.
Talk about that too. And
well, yeah,
listen, I will say one thing. I'm surprised I haven't gotten a comment from Alec Willis, but I'm sure I'll get one after today.
Well, I'm sure that, listen, Mr. Willis has got to worry about his own things and his scorekeepers correcting games correctly. I'm just going to leave that at that. But, listen, that's certainly big words from you, the Brute Force. I know you're being as diplomatic as you can. And Anthony Finkel says we need a Sportswire Pick'em trophy or belt. Yeah, maybe next season. I think next season we'll work on that. We didn't really have the time for it this year. I think we kind of did this late. But, yeah, I'll come up with something. I'll definitely wind up doing something for next season for sure. I'll definitely wind up purchasing something, a trophy or a belt. I could do that very easily. And he also has here a crown. Well, you didn't win the crown. That's John Gonzalez who won the crown. So,
but this is the regular season title. Shouldn't it be like a playoff title too with the Super Bowl?
We are picking the postseason. I mean, are we doing a postseason standings? I mean, the Brewers.
I think we should, like, separate, right?
Yeah, we can do that.
All right. I mean, look, we got 6 games here this week. I mean, I'm going to go through.
We're all 0-0.
Yeah, all right, well, you know what? I mean, let's see if John Gonzalez can be the postseason champion as well, or he'll be like one of the teams.
No. I'll never hear the last of it. Please,
well, I'm going to just say a little tidbit before we get into the games because the 49ers are our first game, and the 49ers this is actually a great segue. They ended the season with a 10-game winning streak. They're the 13th team in the Super Bowl era to actually do this, and only 3 of those teams that have had the 10-game winning streak have actually gone on to win the Super Bowl. And those teams, if you were kind of wondering, were the 72 Dolphins. Well, duh, because they had the perfect season. The 76 Raiders, which I would have had no idea. Maybe Rob Maraska would have known that. And then the 2003 Patriots, which I forgot that they wound up winning 10 games in a row to end the regular season. I completely forgot about that.
I think they ended up winning 21 games?
Yeah, so they won a lot. I want to say they won, 17, 18 games that year, I think, with the regular season and postseason. I could be wrong, but I didn't realize they won 10 in a row or more to win and the regular season. And so those are only 3. So will John Gonzalez avoid the fate of most of those teams? We'll have to find out here. And John also says, before we get to our picks, he says, wow, thanks, Brute. Does this mean we have a bromance?
No.
No,
there's still a rivalry, John Gonzalez. Don't get it twisted. I'm coming after you for the playoffs, and I'm going to win next year. So we're moving on.
Well, okay, all right. So you know what? We are going to move on. That's a perfect segue, and I do want to do that. So you know what? We are going to go to the game, and I just kind of mentioned because we do these things chronologically for those that are following at home. We do them from start to end time. And the first game here is 4:30 Fox. And I am going to go with the Brute Force Brad because I see he's fired up. He's ready to go here. And that is the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks, who I guess in a way the Brute Force were responsible for making the postseason because our beloved Detroit Lions certainly went on the road there. And boy, what a game that was. Dan Campbell, I mean, he kind of had that Mike McSloy mentality to him. How his players were playing for him. And almost kind of reminded me of Yeshiva and SJ Long Island last year. How the guys, nobody gave him a chance. But we did. We gave him a chance because we knew. We knew they could win. And they went in there in Lambeau, and what a gutsy game. I mean, Campbell made call after call, which we were like, what the hell is this guy doing? But he knew something that most people didn't, and that's why the Seattle Seahawks are beneficiaries of it. And the Seahawks themselves won a very, very lucky game against the Los Angeles Rams, but they are on the road here, and I guess you can say one former Jet in the postseason for us. That is Geno Smith, the Brute Force, who's also going to the Pro Bowl here. But the Brute Force, the Seahawks are 9.5-point underdogs here. 49ers have had quite the season, 201 points scored in the starts that Brock Purdy has had, and what a run. They're also one of the only teams other than the 72 Dolphins in NFL history to have 2 quarterbacks with a 5-game winning streak or more, Jimmy G and then Brock Purdy. But, I mean, what's your thoughts here in this matchup? Do the 49ers come away to continue their winning streak, or maybe Geno Smith and Pete Carroll have one more in them here with 42.5 is the over-under, 4:30 p.m. game on Fox, 49ers, 9.5-point favorites.
Yeah, well, let me just capitalize on what you said there, Tom Bryce, because I want to formally congratulate my Detroit Lions on an amazing season and just a great win last week. It's just a shame that they're not in the playoffs because we sure would rather see them than the Seahawks in this game. I think it would have been such a more exciting game to see Detroit against the 49ers. That would have been more exciting. With that being said, I'm telling you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick the 49ers. And it's not going to be close. I think the 49ers are going to blow out the Seahawks. Ladies and gentlemen, the Seahawks were, I believe, 3-6 in their last 9 games. And 3 of their wins were against the Rams twice and the Jets. All right. Should we exactly be impressed by that? No. All right. No. I mean, then the Rams, obviously.
And the Cardinals, by the way. They also got a win against the Cardinals.
Yeah, and you want to add the Cardinal game in. I mean, those are 4 opponents that were hot trash. The Rams and the Cardinals and the Jets who just completely fell apart. So you can't exactly tell me that any of those wins impress you going into the playoffs. So ultimately, listen, it's been a great season for Geno Smith. Props to him for coming back. Comeback player of the year, potentially, probably most likely. But it's been a nice run. But the 49ers are on a different level than them. They're better offensively. They're much better defensively. They're a really good defensive unit, and they're poised to do big things. So I don't think this is going to be close. Tom, what's the spread on this game,
9.5.
Yeah, I'm taking the 49ers. Not even close. I think they're winning by at least 2 touchdowns. This will not be close, and it'll be an ugly start to the playoff weekend because the Seahawks have no chance.
Well, you know what? That's a fair point. And Justin, Brad does make a point. This kind of has the feel of an ugly type of game there in San Francisco. It's probably going to be weather-wise, I would imagine, in the upper 50s, and it's going to have that vibe there. You kind of get that feeling. And 49ers certainly ended the season, quite a run, even offensively. Certainly Christian McCaffrey bringing him in, and that offense totally transformed. Brock Purdy definitely did what a lot of people didn't think, and he certainly led that offense, and they're getting guys healthy, and they have certainly streamrolled into the postseason. They're kind of everybody's pick here, maybe to come out of the NFC, and the Seahawks, as Brad pointed out, they basically got lucky pretty much. They won a lottery ticket, but what's your thoughts here? Geno Smith does return to the postseason, and Pete Carroll does have a nice coaching job here, regardless of how they did it. But can the Seattle Seahawks maybe tame the San Francisco 49ers, or on the 49ers on a crash collision course to return here maybe to the Super Bowl and more?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. We're going to have ourselves a ball game tomorrow. I think they're going to take the 49ers down to the wire.
Okay.
It is going to be a slog. The weather is going to be horrendous. It's supposed to rain about a half an inch.
In San Francisco in January is that means it's here in April. Oof.
Yeah, it's good. It's gonna be like a quagmire out there. And if you remember how the season started for the 49ers in that ugly weather matchup against the Bears ended up winning.
Yep,
now, I'm not saying the Seahawks are going to win. I definitely would like the Seahawks on the spread here to cover. I think this, Brad said that the Niners will win by 2 touchdowns. I don't think the Niners are scoring 2 touchdowns in this game.
Wow.
I could legitimately see a 16-10 slog. Just defense, more defense. I think Seattle's defense, because of the weather, will be able to hold up. They'll be able to run the ball a little bit with Kenneth Walker. Ultimately, San Francisco's the better football team. They're going to end up winning this game. It's going to be a low-scoring game.
All right, fair enough. And kickoff, as Justin pointed out, thunderstorms. 56 and thunderstorms. Thank you to the crack staff for our weather report.
It's a 1:35 local time start.
I'm looking at it, and the weather looks terrible there. It looks like it's going to be rain all day. That means that field there is going to be in poor condition. So we're looking at 50s and rain and thunderstorms, throughout the day. That just is really, really poor weather. So maybe you have a point there. But Chris, 49ers certainly ended the season on a special run. Seahawks, pretty much, they won a lotto ticket because they faced the likes of the Rams, the Cardinals, and our Jets. But Pete Carroll does have a Super Bowl on his resume, a national championship, and he did a nice job with this team. And Geno Smith had certainly a year we would have hoped he would have had with the Jets years ago. And do they have something left, or are the 49ers really that team that very well could return to the Super Bowl and who knows, maybe win it?
You know what? I love a good upset, especially in the wild card round, the 7 seed against the 2 seed. But it ain't happening in this game. I'm sorry. I don't even think it's going to be close. So I'm more on with Brute on this one. With the rain, I think just kind of helps San Francisco more too, because they could just run the ball with McCaffrey all game. You know what I mean? And kind of protect Purdy from maybe throwing a pick, because you know what, we got to remember the guy's still a rookie. I know he had a great run at the end, but he's still a rookie quarterback. The last pick in the draft. We got to. I think the next round he might have a problem. But this round, I think it's just going to be run the ball a lot with McCaffrey, and San Fran's defense is going to control the game. So I think they win big. It may not be a high-scoring game, but maybe like a 21-3 game or something like that. But yeah, definitely San Fran all the way.
All right, and let me get to some comments here because some people are tuned in. First, let me go to Anthony Finkel. He's got a bunch. He says the 49ers QB is pretty good. Yeah, that's kind of a cute one. All right, I'll give you that. Lions were the sweetheart story of the 22 season. Yeah, you know what? To go from 2-6 to 9-8, and the way they played, I mean, certainly you look at some games. I look at the Seahawks. Listen, the Seahawks game, Brad, is the reason why the Lions are unfortunately out because we lost that game 48-45. We lost the Buffalo game last play in regulation. Those are two games. The Vikings game had a 10-point lead week 2 in the fourth quarter.
They needed, right?
Yep, that's it. That's it. And the Lions would be in the postseason. John Gonzalez says these 7-2 matchups are a joke. Come on, Brute. You love Geno. Nothing to analyze here. The Niners will win big. Bosa will eat Geno's lunch. John Gonzalez, Bosa making defense great again. No way, Justin. This is a train wreck. Fink, can I borrow a napkin? Brute is using a bounty towel. All right. Well, I mean, Anthony Finkel, who do you like in this matchup? Because you've said different things here. So I'm going to wait for Anthony Finkel and his pick. Maybe he's writing it down on a napkin somewhere. But I am going to go for San Francisco because I would think that the weather would be advantage San Francisco here because Geno Smith in this situation, I mean, how many times has he been in this spot? That would be my 1 point here, and I don't know if it's a Seahawks team. And don't forget, when Seattle and San Francisco played on the Thursday night game, weather wasn't that great there in Seattle, and San Francisco was pretty much able to control the tempo of that game. In fact, that's the only game in Brock Purdy's 6 starts that the 49ers scored 30 points or less. They scored 21 that game. So I'm going to think at the end of the day, this weather conditions in San Francisco would actually suit the 49ers a little bit more than Seattle. So I'm going to say, I don't know, 20-10, San Francisco, 21-10. Maybe kind of a carbon copy of the game that we saw back on the Thursday night game, I think the first week in December. And Anthony Finkel says he likes the 49ers. Thank you very much for that. All right. Great stuff there. So that brings us to game 2 of our Super Wildcard Weekend. I know my friend Anastasia Rasnia is going to be very curious on who I pick in this matchup because she is a big Los Angeles Chargers fan. She is listening. And the Brute Force, that brings us to one of the 2 games I would consider a toss-up this weekend here when it comes to who you might favor. And that is, of course, the Los Angeles Chargers and the Jacksonville Jaguars. 2, I guess, very similar teams and kind of young quarterbacks and teams that are emerging franchise. Maybe Chargers are a little bit ahead here of the curve in the rebuild, but that's an 8:15 Saturday night game. And Jaguars, as I had pointed out here, completed a worst-to-first season in the division. First time that was done since, Chad Pennington in the 2008 Miami Dolphins, led by Tony Sparano. And certainly here, Jaguars had a great second half. Unfortunately, they beat our Jets a few weeks back to pretty much get themselves into the division. And Chargers are in the postseason here after they should have made it last year after there's some questionable calls. But this is, to me, one of the true toss-up games. And what's your thoughts on this matchup Saturday night? Chargers are, though, 2-point favorites here. 47.5 is the over-under. And what do you think?
Yeah, so no upset alert here because I'm going with the Chargers. I'm picking the Chargers to win on the road. Listen, this is going to probably be arguably the best game of the entire weekend. I think that, between these 2 teams, they're relatively even, on both sides of the ball. I just think the determining factor is just going to be Justin Herbert making plays. And I know Trevor Lawrence is going to play great too, and Doug Peterson has done an amazing job as a coach. I just see Justin Herbert making the final play, and he has a little bit more of an advantage with his weapons than Trevor Lawrence. I think, he has better receivers. I know the running backs are relatively even, but Eckler has a little more experience than ETN. So I just think that it's not much, but it's a little bit more of experience. And Herbert just being the type of quarterback he is. I know he hasn't had a great season, as much as we thought he was going to do, especially
had the rib injury though.
Right, but of late he's starting to play a lot better. And I just think that it's going to be a tight game, and I just think he's going to make the play that gets them over the top again. The Jaguars are going to be right there. I'm not saying this is anywhere close to a blowout. The 2-point spread is relatively right because I think it will be a 3-point, 4-point game in the end. So I'm going to take the Chargers in a thrilling game, and it might save Brandon Staley's job if they win, because if they don't, it's a question mark. I don't say maybe he's gone necessarily, but it gives them the idea, at least to think about it, because the Chargers are a really good team. I know they still had issues with injuries, and that's why they're probably not as high as they could have been this season, but I think they'll win this game.
Well, I mean, look, if Sean Payton is truly on the market, I mean, that is a very, very valid point. So we'll see what some of the other guys say. And, you know, Justin, you've got the crack staff working on the weather forecast. And surprisingly, in Jacksonville, it's actually going to be cold for kickoff. It's actually for kickoff, we're looking at in the 40s. I mean, it's kind of really surprising for this time. Yep, 8 o'clock kickoff.
The high is 53 tomorrow. It's gonna be sunny during the day. There's no rain in the forecast.
43 though, a kickoff. That's like for Jacksonville. That's like what we had on Christmas Eve. 43 there. One of my friends, Daniel Slavin, lives in Satellite Park, and he tells me when it's in like the 40s and 50s in Florida, it's like they wear winter coats and gloves and hand warmers. So that's an interesting, I guess, dynamic here for both teams because they're not used to it. So, I mean, you've got the Jaguars jersey here, Justin. So I kind of think I know where you're going here. So tell me why you're going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars here, and anything else you might want to share about this intriguing matchup. I think of two emerging young teams and two great young quarterbacks.
So before we get started, can I get a Duval?
I do like the Twitter hashtag, by the way. Yeah, good point. I'll give you that.
The Jags have one thing the Chargers don't. They have a coach who's won a Super Bowl. That's going to play a huge factor in this game. Brandon Staley has made questionable coaching decision after questionable coaching decision throughout his first 2 years. I think the quarterback gap is not that large. Mike Williams not playing for the Chargers, a huge, huge loss. And they're going to feel that in this game. And who's at fault for that? Brandon Staley for playing all his guys in a meaningless Week 18 game. The Jaguars are the healthier team. I think they will be able to run the ball well with Travis Etienne. Now, granted, in the game last Saturday night, Trevor Lawrence did miss a few throws. I think he corrects that, and I think he makes some big plays. The secondary of the Chargers can absolutely be had. I think Christian Kirk can have a huge game, and I think he even gets into the end zone at least once. It's going to be a close game, but I like the Jaguars 20-16.
All right. I mean, those certainly could be very, very valid points there. And, Chris, this is definitely a tough game to pick because they're two young teams. They kind of, in some weeks, you don't really know what to expect from them. Jaguars were the stronger team in the second half, but the Chargers probably on paper are the better football team. Justin does make the point that Doug Peterson has won a lot of postseason games. He's been a Super Bowl winner. But, I mean, I don't know here. What do you think here? Chargers are 2-point favorites. 47.5 is the over-under, and 8:15 kickoff here tomorrow night.
Yeah, no, I like all the points Justin's making, and I was thinking about it all week, and I've been going back and forth on this game, to be honest, because I think it is going to be a good game. But for some reason, I'm falling on the Chargers only because watching the Jaguars game last week, you know what? They had a hard time scoring points on offense. You know, like their offense just couldn't get going against the Titans.
Running game was not good at all last week.
No, I mean, and listen, the defense played great, so that's what actually won the game for them. And they were going against a third string quarterback for the Titans as well. So I mean,
he'd only been on the team for 2 weeks. He'd only been on the team for 2 weeks.
Had a pretty good game against Dallas, by the way, not to mention Josh.
Yeah, so they should look good, right? But I don't know. I'm leaning towards the Chargers right now, so I'm going to take the Chargers. I just don't trust the Jaguars right now. I think with a good offseason, they're going to go into next season with a really good team and probably going to be the favorite for that division. But I think right now, I think the Chargers win this game.
All right, let's get to some of the people here before I pick, as we always do. John Gonzalez says, definitely this game is a tricky toss-up. Love the matchup. Two great young quarterbacks. Anthony Finkel says, I'm rolling with the Jags. And he gives a good reason why. I like seeing Trevor Lawrence's development. Super Bowl winning coach and getting hot at the right time gives the Jacksonville icon here. John Gonzalez has a few comments. Walker and Allen could have a big game. Anthony Finkel, who would know about this because he's on his way, I believe, to the state of Florida, at least to live there with I guess a secondary home, whatever he wants to call it at this point. The iguanas freeze and fall out of the trees when Florida gets too cold. Like I said, Daniel Slavin, I think you know him, Anthony Finkel. He lives in Satellite Park. When it gets to like 50 degrees, it's almost like hand warmers and coats, and they don't know what it's like. So that's a fair point. John Gonzalez, though, says, I've been on the fence with this game, but I'm going with the Jags. But that's why I'm going with the Los Angeles Chargers here, because I watched Jacksonville, and I think Justin even brought it up. I watched them against the Titans, and literally the Titans were playing with a third-string quarterback. They had literally no offense. All they did was run the ball. What did they run the ball? 45 times last week? I mean, they literally had no offense, and Tennessee was winning most of that game for the majority of that time. And defense made the plays, no question. Jacksonville's defense definitely stepped up in the second half, but I didn't get the taste in my mouth that I thought I was going to get. I thought Jacksonville was going to win that game by like 2 touchdowns. And I kind of think here in this spot, Justin Herbert's got a little bit more offensive weapons. And I kind of think here Jacksonville pulls out the upset. I don't know, 24-20 maybe. 24-21. It's not really an upset, but they are on the road. I mean, so I kind of think here, just because of what I saw, Jacksonville wasn't able to run the game well. And you look at that offense, and Jacksonville also struggled in the red zone last week. I mean, they struggled. I mean, it was a Jacksonville team that had played really well offensively up to that point. But I don't know. I mean, something tells me here that the Chargers find a way to win, and maybe Brandon Staley does keep his job. Part of me even thinks, you know what? I'm going to say something totally crazy. Even if the Chargers win this game and get blown out the following week, I don't even know if he's still safe. Brandon Staley might have to get to a championship game. He might. I'm just saying. I don't know.
No. I personally think he's safe. Like, okay. Even if he loses tomorrow, I think he's safe.
If he gets blown out, God forbid, like 38-7.
If the Jaguars blow him out, which I can't see.
Me either, but
game, maybe.
Okay, all right, because
that's when the conversation might start.
All right, listen, you never know here in this league, so I mean that's so we'll see. Obviously, I know Anastasia is definitely rooting here for the Chargers, and John also says Staley is one of the reasons why I'm picking Jacksonville. No, I get that. Well, you know, and listen, that's why I brought the point up.
I gave him the coaching edge. Yep.
All right, well, listen,
the coaching edge.
If you were to go with Jacksonville, I mean, Peterson's he's a proven commodity. He's a big winner, and he won as a player and a coach, and I could certainly see what he's done in Jacksonville. Again, a franchise that has really had limited success the last 20 years. You think about that franchise, they've had essentially 3 trips to the postseason in over a decade. I mean, they really have not had much success. I mean, when they get to the postseason, they've gone deep, but just really a franchise that's won very little. But, okay, we'll see what happens. But the Brewforce, let's go to this matchup here next, which I am sure almost like 99% of America is going to be picking one team over this other team. And we're talking about the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. And the Bills here are 13-point favorites. 43.5 is the over-under. And I would say if we were doing spreads, I'd still be a little bit cautious about a 13-point spread here, just because if you've been following the games this season, these teams with these big spreads, they almost never cover. Point in case would be the Vikings as an example, the Chiefs. I mean, so teams that have been favored big, they don't win in these spots. But Dolphins here are 13-point favorites, 43.5. Obviously, you feel like Buffalo's got a lot on their mind, certainly a long, deep run into the postseason. And the Dolphins pretty much, well, they lucked out into the postseason, kind of like Seattle, conversely, won the game that they pretty much had to win a layup against the Jets. And, I mean, Dolphins avoid catastrophe. Also, they join kind of rarefied air, and you might want to say as one of a handful of teams to go on a 5-game losing streak and make it into the postseason. So I don't know if that's good company or not. Maybe we'll see if they find a way to win. Carlos Arturo Chavez, you might want to know, Brad, actually picked the Dolphins to win this game. That's his thoughts. But do you want to pick the Miami Dolphins? Are you seeing something? You picked them last week. So, I mean, are you seeing something here? And maybe quarterback, coaching, Mike McDaniel? I mean, so who do you want to pick here in this matchup between the AFC East Division champion Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins, who've returned to the postseason here?
I'm looking for a pair of glasses, to put on to see if I could, see something that I'm not seeing. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, all right? Listen, you talk about 99% of the people. Well, the 1% is Carlos Arturo Chavez, because he is out of his mind, and I think that Listen, I love you, Carlos, okay, but for this pick, you might have to get drug tested, all right, because there's no way that the Dolphins with, who is it, Skylar Thompson is the quarterback,
Yes.
Are going to win this game. Skylar Thompson is garbage. I would even go as far to say that I might do a better job at quarterback than Skylar.
I would think that maybe Tristan Thompson or Clay Thompson would do a better job.
Please. I mean, this guy, he hasn't shown me anything, and he hasn't shown you anything against anyone. And now he's going to go into the playoffs in Buffalo in that crazy environment and win. I mean, Carlos Arturo Chavez. I mean, you got to come back and just apologize for that pick and change it, because that is pathetic. All right. Ultimately, the Bills are the much better team right now. Obviously, they're playing for something more than just their team. They're playing for a guy who, obviously, we are proud to say has made a nice recovery here and is going down the right path in Damar Hamlin. But they're playing for him, and there's. I was going to pick this team just because they're so much better, but I'm picking them not only because of that, but because of what they're playing for. They're playing for more than just the team. And as a player and as someone who has seen things like this happen, maybe not Damar Hamlin-like, but like adversity where, people get hurt or something happens to a team, teams lift up and they play better and they play with more urgency and more fire and desire, as Clyde would say. So, listen, I'm going to say, okay, the Buffalo wins. And, Tom, you talk about the spread. I know I should worry about the spread, but in this game, I don't even think Skylar Thompson is going to score 10 points. So if he can't do that, then I'm going to say that Buffalo gets the high 20s to 30. I don't see a reason why I shouldn't take the spread. I think I'm going to take the spread with Buffalo, and they're going to win by a lot.
Well, they scored 6 last week against the Jets. So to make your point, you would be – yeah.
With Joe Flacco at quarterback.
No, yeah, but Joe Flacco didn't play defense. The Jets do have a good defense.
They do. But, I mean, Joe Flacco gave them the ball over and over again, right? And they still couldn't score. They couldn't even score a touchdown. They couldn't score a touchdown.
Yeah.
And because Justin kind of initiated it, our weather report from the crack staff, kickoff will be 27 in Buffalo. So, actually, I guess it's balmy for Buffalo. In Jacksonville, 43 is like 10 in New York a couple weeks ago. So, that's kind of the interesting point here. But, Justin, interesting stat that I saw about the Dolphins. The last time the Miami Dolphins won a playoff game was back in the year 2000. It's a franchise that's only now been to the postseason 3 times since, the year 2001. And you look at this team here in this matchup, they kind of backed into the postseason return here for the first time since 2016. And I know pretty much like I said, 99% of America is going to pick the Buffalo Bills here. And for obviously good reasons, these teams matched up not too long ago. They actually split between them, but I think it's a totally different Dolphins team and a totally different Bills team in a way, because they are playing, I think, for something bigger than what's on the field. And they were already one of the teams I think everybody was picking to come out of the AFC. But what's your thoughts here? 1 o'clock CBS kickoff. Buffalo is 13-point favorites. 43.5 is the over-under. And give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, this was a compelling matchup, but unfortunately, it loses all its luster without Tua Tagovailoa. And, unfortunately, he hasn't been able to play the last couple of weeks. And honestly, really, who knows what his future holds? Obviously, Skylar Thompson's going into such a no-win situation here. I have no problem taking the Bills with the spread, because the Bills would only have to score 13 points to cover. I mean, I don't think it'll be a shutout. I don't think it'll be a shutout, but definitely less than 10. And I could definitely see the Bills have scored at least 20. So the Bills are going to win this game pretty easily. It's unfortunate that we didn't get the best potential game this week, which we would have gotten if the Steelers had made the playoffs. Not that the Steelers had any chance, but the Steelers could have at least put up a compelling fight. The Dolphins.
I think they would have absolutely. Listen, Brad Rice. They would have absolutely put up a compelling fight, because
the Dolphins have no fight here. Skylar Thompson just has.
They would have at least scored 10 points. They would have. Listen. This is almost like the comment. I can't believe we said this when Obama said years ago when he compared, I think, ISIS to a high school basketball team. This is almost like Skylar Thompson, a quarterback here, the Dolphins and the Bills. That's what it's almost like here.
It's such a no-win situation for Skylar Thompson. You feel bad for the kid, but you know what? The Bills are just gonna win easily.
Absolutely, no question about that. We'll see here. And Chris, again, I mean, Dolphins return to the postseason, but it does seem like after everything we've talked about here, it could just be a cameo, a guest appearance. And the Bills are, again, we're going to be one of the teams everybody's going to be picking, I think, for valid reasons, but maybe a little bit more off the field because of everything with DeMar Hamlin. And obviously, thank God he's doing a lot better, and certainly he has pulled through. I think we're all happy about that, not just fans of the Buffalo Bills, but I think everybody in the world. So Buffalo does have a lot of motivation here. It is a 1 o'clock game, and this is kind of, if you look at history between the Dolphins and Bills, this is the kind of spot where Buffalo would probably trample over the Dolphins. But, I mean, what's your thoughts here in this matchup, 1 o'clock Sunday? Buffalo are 13-point favorites here at home in Orchard Park. 43.5 is the over-under against Miami.
The one thing you got with Buffalo, right? They're playing with all this emotion, obviously, because of Hamlin and the situation the last week or so. And we seen last week, I thought last week the Patriots were going to get destroyed by Buffalo, right? But they hung in there with Buffalo, shockingly. And if it wasn't for a couple of kickoff returns, maybe Buffalo loses that game. So I don't think the Dolphins are going to win this game. I don't even think they're going to come close to winning this game because of the quarterback situation there too. But Buffalo really has to watch themselves next week, right? Because they're probably going to play Cincy. That's the game where they got to keep these emotions in control. Like Brute Force said, that teams, when they have this emotion, it could work for you and it could also work against you because sometimes that emotion, you can't control it. It's just, but hopefully they could kind of, control it for the next few weeks, obviously. But this game should close. I didn't think last week was going to be close, and it was. But I can't see Miami putting up any kind of fight this week. So I think Buffalo wins big. The cover should be a no-problem game.
And I want to give a credit to Justin here before I get to some of the comments, and he corrects, well, sort of, not quite corrects me, but does back up partially what I had said. The last time the Miami Dolphins had won a playoff game was Wild Card Weekend back in 2000 against the Indianapolis Colts, led by Peyton Manning, and I believe it was Jim Mora was the coach of that team. So that was a way back in the time machine. That goes back to an AFC Wild Card Weekend.
Who quarterbacked for Miami?
Was it Brian Greasy?
Yes, Brian Greasy.
Brian Greasy was the quarterback.
Because remember, the year before was this unceremonious exit for Dan Marino.
62-7 in Jacksonville.
Yes.
I remember it like yesterday.
Oh, it was like blowout.
It was torture. It was like
final game.
Dan Marino was literally on like one leg. He was almost like Ric Flair wrestling at the Starrcast back in the summer.
They would go on to get shut out the next week by the Raiders, and they haven't won since then. They've only had
4 playoff appearances, right? 2001,
they made the playoffs in 01,
08, 16.
16. That's it until this year.
Yeah, that would be old. Yeah, I mean, it's franchise really again.
A proud franchise with multiple Super Bowls. Is really
I was gonna say, and Chris definitely remembers Dan Marino in the heyday. I don't, but I can tell you, like even up until 2000-ish, that was a franchise that you looked at like the Steelers now today. I mean, that was a franchise like that was always over 500, always was in the postseason. They may not have won a lot of Super Bowls, but they were always right there in the mix. And you think about the last 20 years. I mean, I think since 2003, they've had they've been basically kind of mediocre. I mean, since that last year, that 10-win team, they just haven't had much success.
And I just double checked. It was Fiedler and not Greasy.
Okay. Fiedler.
Because I remember he's the guy that did take over for Marino that next year.
Yep.
I'm not
By the way,
mistaken.
he's a Long Island native.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oceanside High School.
He hung around. Now he's doing CBS. The local channel out, in New York. He does like the night Sunday night Jet wrap-up show.
Yeah, I think I saw that. Yeah, I think I saw that. Yeah. Jay Fiedler, boy, that's going back to the time machine. Yeah, it was kind of that era of Dolphin quarterbacks were mediocre.
By the way, before we move on from this game and go to the next one,
sure.
Tomorrow's the 50-year anniversary of Super Bowl VII. Dolphins finishing off the perfect season.
The Miami Dolphins are getting mentioned probably a lot more than they've been mentioned
That's
in
an
a long.
opportunity for them to get crushed.
Well, I would say they, other than the Brian Flores situation, they've been getting mentioned a lot more on the field than they have in a very, very long time. But
Yes.
True.
let me go to some comments here. Anthony Finkel says Buffalo will trample the Dolphins. Get it? Trample. What do you mean? That almost kind of reminds me of the Led Zeppelin song "Trampled Underfoot" for the Led Zeppelin fans out there. Squish the fish. I get that. John Gonzalez says, "What's to talk about here? Bills have everything going for them. Buffalo eats sushi. Bills roll huge." So John Gonzalez is going into the emoji business. Anthony Finkel's got the napkin business covered. So he says, take the points, take the over. You really go the over here? 43.5. I kind of find that fascinating.
I wouldn't
Me either.
touch that.
Yeah, that I would stay away from.
Carlos was listening to Randy Dillon, got confused. Well, maybe. He says, here's how you see this game. I'm the Bills, Brutus is the Dolphins. Wow. That is definitely. Wow, that is
that's disrespectful.
Wow, bro. I mean, that's like the Ethert brothers when they were talking about, the dunk over you. I mean, that's
abusive.
That's abuse, bro. That's definitely abuse. I'm not gonna go that route because there's always somebody that's DMing me about something I said at this point on Sportswire. But I am going to take the Buffalo Bills just because I'm not convinced that Miami in this spot in the cold weather. I don't really think they can move the ball. I mean, they struggled to move the ball last week. I mean, what would make me think they could move the ball here in this spot? I mean, I guess if Tua was healthy, I would give Miami a shot, but I'm going to kind of say I would, because they played them okay, the snow game back in early December. That was the game on the Saturday night game. And they were in there. They hung in there. They had the lead, I believe, in the second half. But I kind of thought this is going to be Buffalo 24, Miami 7, Miami 6, something like that. It's got that feel of just one of those games that I don't know how Miami moves the ball. What are they going to get? 220 total yards of offense, if that? I mean, that's just my thoughts here. Giants game, I'm going to go last because we always do the locals last because I actually do have a lot to say on the Giants game. I've got a lot of stuff I want to add there, so I'll come back to that. But the brute force, the other team I'm going to go to that's kind of unfortunately in that DeMar Hamlin situation is the Cincinnati Bengals, who might have won, I guess, the lotto because they play the Baltimore Ravens once again, who are without Lamar Jackson. And I'm kind of surprised here in a way because if I'm Vegas, I only have the Bengals as 8.5-point favorites, even though the Ravens are starting a third-string quarterback here once again. Maybe they know something that I don't. Maybe it's a weather issue, although kickoff in Cincinnati is pretty much similar to what it's going to be in Buffalo, and these two teams are cold-weather teams. Maybe that's kind of the point here, but Bengals certainly are looking to return to the Super Bowl. They had a very, very strong second half, and they're a part of the trio of teams in the AFC that everyone expects to go deep between Kansas City, who got the bye, and the Buffalo Bills, who we just pointed out. But obviously, give me your thoughts here. And Baltimore, who kind of limped into the second half, they probably, I guess, get a pass because of Lamar Jackson and his 6 consecutive weeks he's missed now. And the Bengals, who are firing for the most part on all cylinders here. So give me your thoughts on an 8:15 p.m. kickoff, the last Sunday night game, I believe, of the season. And what's your thoughts here on who advances?
Yeah, I mean, the one tough part about this weekend is that there are a lot of these games that are just going to be not really competitive. And here's another one that I just think is not going to be competitive. And listen, there's something to be said. Some people tell me, well, Brad, even though they have a third-string quarterback, they are the Ravens. They play the Bengals tough all the time. They're in the same division. They know each other. Well, that all doesn't matter when it comes to the playoffs, when it comes to which team's better than the other team. Because ultimately, once again, with the third-string quarterback, just like we talked about with Skylar Thompson, now we're talking about, I believe it's Anthony Brown, who was the quarterback. I mean, sounds like a basketball.
That's officially announced, by the way. That's not been confirmed.
All right, but it sounds like it. So, unless we get a different answer, if it's Anthony Brown, who sounds like a basketball player I probably played with a few weeks ago, all right.
Well, actually, no, there was Tony Brown that was from Marquette. He played for the Lakers, and the reason I bring this up, as a child, my father was friends with somebody who went to Marquette University, and his roommate was Tony Brown. That's how I would just throw the sports reference.
So if it's him, there's no chance. I mean, listen, I do understand if potentially the quarterback does change and they go back to their second stringer. But I will say the result won't change. The Bengals will win at home. I think that, as you said, Tom, they're firing on all cylinders. They're playing really good football. And like you said, there's a part of them that's also motivated from what happened and moving on from it. But I have a lot of confidence. I know people are also saying it's hard to beat a team after you just played them. All that nonsense goes out the door. This is the playoffs. This is the Bengals at home. This is Billy Heenan all fired up. Okay, and
now, is he going to be there? Have you heard that he's going to? Because he was at the last Bengals game, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe he was. He might be there. So, if he's there, they normally win. So, I think the Bengals do win, and I'm going to give it to them relatively easy. Another team that I believe will cover the spread against the Ravens. So, I'm got the Bengals.
All right, fair enough. I mean, those are some good points here, and I'll wait to get to John Gonzalez's comments. But, Justin, our Bengals win here, back-to-back division titles, and that doesn't happen too often for the franchise. I believe they did that in the Marvin Lewis years and maybe one other time. So they are back here in a spot that's not too familiar with them, but Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and company certainly do a lot for you. Still wasn't, I think, the Jamar Chase we saw last season, but nonetheless, Bengals had a very, very strong second half, and they won a lot of impressive games, and they certainly rectified the slow start. But Ravens here, do they have a chance? Third-string quarterback, and I don't know if it makes a difference, but Bengals here are 8.5-point favorites. 40.5 is the over-under. 8:15 Sunday night game. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I don't think it's really going to make much of a difference. It is reporting right now that Tyler Huntley is a game-time decision, and he was a full participant in Friday's practice. So I guess that's a good sign for Tyler Huntley. But even with Huntley, they have not been able to consistently move the football the last few weeks. And that's going to be a problem against arguably the greatest trio of weapons or quartet, if you want to add the running back, in the playoffs. I mean, you could argue some better duos like Steph Diggs, Gabe Davis. But, I mean, you look at what the weapons that the Bengals have, whether it's T. Higgins, whether it's Jamar Chase, whether it's Tyler Boyd, even Joe Mixon in the backfield. I mean, the Bengals are loaded. You really can't key in on one guy. So it's just gonna be difficult. It might look good. It might look close in the first half, but I could see like a 27-10 kind of game. Bengals are gonna eventually win this game pretty easily.
All right, fair enough here. We'll certainly see, and it is a Bengals team that certainly has had a lot of momentum, and they have here 11 straight wins in December and January here over the past 2 years. We'll see if it continues. But Chris here, once again, Bengals-Ravens, a rematch. And again, what's made this fascinating weekend here to me so interesting is every team has played each other at least once. So I think that's kind of an interesting nugget. These teams have played twice, and they split. Baltimore beat them, different Baltimore team at that time on Sunday night, and Bengals got them and some last week, so it's a rematch of last week. And do the Bengals continue their momentum, make it 12 straight wins in December and January, or does Baltimore and John Harbaugh find a way to pull off an upset here?
Yeah, that line looks too low, to be honest. Only 8.5.
That's what I said, 8.5. Yep.
Even with Huntley, like let's say best case scenario, he plays. I still don't see them keeping it close. At least I don't think so. It looks too easy of a line. I mean, maybe the Ravens can keep it close for a while because their defense has been playing really well, but their offense, just like Justin said, they're just not even moving the ball. And they're healthy. Like the running, their running backs are back. Dobbins is back. Plus Edwards is back, right? So, but they just haven't been able to do it. I think that's their only shot against Cincinnati. Ball control, keep the ball out of Cincy's offense's hands and try that. But otherwise, I think Cincy should win this game easy.
Cincinnati wins 12 of their last 14 games, and it's one of the most successful seasons in the franchise's history from a regular season standpoint. So we'll see if all that matters. And Let's get to John Gonzalez before I get to my thoughts. He says, no Lamar, no Ravens, Bengals win easy. He also says here, Anthony Brown played with the Knicks. Dolan loves the guy. I'd have to look that up. I'm sure my crack staff will note on that. And one thing I will want to say, because I'm going to pick the Bengals in a second, but this one's for you, Brad, because I was hearing some Steelers fans out there knock Mike Tomlin for his lack of postseason success over the past several years. But what about John Harbaugh? I mean, John Harbaugh these last several years since he won a Super Bowl. I mean, the Ravens haven't had much postseason success. What have they won? One postseason game the last 9 or 10 years, and everybody,
has one win.
Got one win
in his tenure. At least
he's got one. He's got one win in his tenure. And what have they won? 1-2 playoff games since they last won the Super Bowl in 2012. Maybe. And everybody got on Tomlin, certain Steelers fans. But you know what? Harbaugh's got pretty much the same exact track record the last decade. That's just my one point that I want to get on a rant here for some Steelers fans who probably need to check it. But there's no reason I could pick the Baltimore Ravens if they're going to start a third-string quarterback. I mean, it's like I think John said and Brad said it. You legitimately can't pick a third-string quarterback in a postseason game. You just can't. There's just no way. I mean, if it was Lamar Jackson, I would say, you know what? Maybe there's a plausible path, time of possession, turnovers. Baltimore isn't bad defensively. Okay, fine, but I can't pick Baltimore here in this spot. I think Cincinnati wins. I think Cincinnati wins comfortably by at least 10. I mean, the only thing I would say in defense of the low spread is that Cincinnati and the Raiders played last year in this spot, and we kind of saw the questionable outcome. But even then, Raiders were a better football team, I think, than this Baltimore team we're going to see. But I think, I guess it would be, I don't know, 23-10 Cincinnati or 24-10, something like that. It's kind of got that vibe. It would just be my one thought here. So let's go to the Monday night game. We're going to go Giants last because they're a local team, and the Brute Force Brad Weiss, I'm so curious on what you say in this game because these two teams, in a lot of ways, they mirror each other. They've obviously played early on in the season, but they don't mirror each other in how they play. But they both kind of had, disappointing seasons, or at least left bitter taste in your mouths. Maybe more so the Cowboys, certainly in a long run, the Bucs in their record. And Todd Bowles does win the NFC South. I mean, listen, that was a joke in itself. And he joins, rarefied air and being now one of a handful of coaches to lead a team to a division title with a losing record. He joins the likes of Ron Rivera with the Commanders, of course, your beloved Commanders when they were the Washington football team a few years ago. And also the Panthers did it in 2014, I believe. And also the Pete Carroll-led Seattle Seahawks, who did beat the New Orleans Saints. I believe that was in 2010, if I'm almost pretty sure of that, because I remember.
That was the Beastquake game.
Yep.
The Marshawn Lynch run.
Yep, that was the game. The Saints were what were they, almost 10-point favorites in Seattle. Everybody said, nah. But it's not the case this year in terms of the spread. But the point is, these two teams really were disappointments, I think. I mean, certainly Dallas won the 12 games, but they definitely left a bitter taste in everyone's mouths, even Cowboys fans. I heard it all throughout the week. But they are here 2.5-point favorites, Brad. Bucs are in Tampa at home. 45.5 is the over-under here. 8:15 ESPN ABC game. I might actually say this is the game I'm actually looking forward to most, despite how I kind of introduced that game. But, I mean, what's your thoughts here? I mean, these are two teams you legitimately have no love here for. You have to pick somebody because it is the postseason, so we can't do ties. But, I mean, who do you think wins this game here? Wow. The first one of the night here. Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I say, how about them Cowboys? All right, because it's time, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for them to collapse. All right, and this is exactly what they do. As I told you, and as I say to you guys, as Stephen A. Smith says to everybody, they're an accident waiting to happen. All right, and ultimately, this is exactly what's going to happen. Somebody tell me how many times the Cowboys have beat Tom Brady in his career?
Zero.
Never beat him.
I knew that, actually. I knew that.
When's the last time the Cowboys won a road playoff game?
1993.
1993. All right. 1993.
That was in San Francisco, right, for the championship game?
I believe so. Listen, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, and by the way, you talked about those Commanders. Sam Howell beat them in their last game.
That was atrocious.
Now he beat them and made them look bad. All right. So guess what?
And they played everybody.
Correct.
Right.
To Justin's point, correct. Great point. All right. So ultimately, listen, this is Tom Brady. This is the playoffs. Okay. And ultimately, as bad as the Buccaneers have played, Tom Brady knows how to win in the playoffs, and the Cowboys don't. And that's exactly why I'm taking the Buccaneers. This will not be pretty. This will be ugly. I believe the other issue is that, ladies and gentlemen, Dak Prescott is a turnover machine. He throws the ball away too much. Okay, he's going to make mistakes in this game. And I just think Tom Brady will not make mistakes. He will control the ball. He will get the ball out quick. Okay, and he will make plays enough to beat the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy. The only thing that will worry me about the Buccaneers is Todd Bowles. But listen, when it comes to the playoffs, all right, who really is going to be the head coach of this team? It's Tom Brady. Okay, he's the guy who's going to make the decisions on offense and make the decisions, when it comes to the big time moments. Defensively, Todd Bowles will take care of it. Okay, but offensively, it's going to be Tom Brady, and he's going to do enough. The Cowboys won't. Dak Prescott will make mistakes, and the Cowboys fans who are already talking about how they might make the Super Bowl this year, all right, are going to go home in their first game of this postseason.
Oh, my God. If Cowboy fans are really saying it, the way they finished that season, I mean, they clearly – I don't know what games they're watching. So I'm going to have some thoughts on that when I pick. But, Justin, there is some interesting points to me. I mean, Dallas, they win 12 games, yes. But, I mean, watching them objectively, you kind of had a bitter taste in your mouth. You have the Bucs, who pretty much – in a lot of ways, kind of lucked into winning this division. They pretty much won almost every game the same way. Even the game against Carolina, they almost kind of blew that game, and they won a lot of these games almost the same way. And it really wasn't the same Bucs team we saw that won the Super Bowl in the year prior, in 2021 from this year, had won the NFC South pretty convincingly. But somebody does have to win. I guess in some ways, it's kind of a similarity here between these two coaches and the lack of their success, at least from a postseason standpoint in these franchises here. Somebody has to win. Monday night game, I do think this is the most interesting game I kind of find on the slate of Super Wildcard Weekend. It closes it out. And the Dallas Cowboys here are, though, 2.5-point favorites over the Bucs. 45.5 is the over-under, 8:15 p.m. game Monday night. And give me your thoughts.
First of all, I'm disappointed in both of you for mispronunciating the name of the Dallas football team. They're the Dallas Choke Boys.
Wow.
Because that's what they do in the postseason. They choke. And guess what? It's going to happen again. And this will be a choke job because, yes, the Buccaneers have not been good this year, but they do have Tom Brady, and that's what's going to carry them in this game. And the Dallas Choke Boys, again, will fall flat in the month of January, as accustomed to. They have 3 playoff wins since 1996. 3. That's it.
I'm aware.
No conference championship games. That ain't changing. Give me Tampa. I'm gonna go 23-17 Bucks.
I mean, listen, that certainly could be. And I mean, Chris, though, again, I mean, certainly Dallas, again, it won 12 games on paper, but you definitely did, at least the last month of the season, they limped to a win against Houston, and they played very poorly last week against Washington. They beat Philadelphia by luck with Gardner Minshew, and it really was a team. Even Tennessee, they let Tennessee hang in there. It's a team that just, again, I don't think they really played that well these last 5 or 6 weeks of the season. And it's a Tampa Bay team also that won pretty much most of their games the entire season kind of the same way, and these teams squared off in week 1. This is where actually Dak Prescott, to Brad's point, got injured. So this is kind of where maybe you'd say this is where the Cowboys season kind of changed, maybe for the better, for the worse in different ways. But somebody does have to win here. Dallas is 2.5-point favorites. 45.5 is the over-under here in Tampa. Weather, by the way, for the weather forecast is supposed to be right around 60 for kickoff. So that's not too bad. So it's certainly a little bit warmer in Tampa. So it should be a fun game. But 8:15 Monday night, what do you think here, Chris, between Dallas and Tampa?
This is another game I was going back and forth all week. I just tried to break it down to a simpler formula here. You know, like sometimes the team that runs the ball better and the one that can stop the run better is better, and I think that's Dallas. I hope they choke because I not a team I like particularly much, but I just think Dallas is going to win, and I think it sets up next week. It'll be Dallas versus San Fran, and if the Giants win, it'll be Giants and Philly. So it'd be good, good rivalry games next week in the NFC. But I think Dallas is going to figure out a way to win this game. Usually they figure out ways to lose a game in the playoffs, but I just think the team and the Bucs have not been good all year. I know they did beat Dallas week 1, I think 19-3.
Yep.
But I just think, listen, Tampa Bay's in that horrible division, and they only won it by 8 and 9. They should have ran away with that division. It was that bad this year, the NFC South. So I just think Dallas is going to win it. Close game. I don't think it'll be a blowout. Maybe 23-20 or something like that.
Yeah, that I definitely kind of think that makes sense. Also, let's go to John Gonzalez because Anthony Finkel is tuned out, so I'm assuming he'll give the rest of his picks on a napkin, right? He'll probably write them at like 4:29 kickoff, and I don't think that should be legal. By the way, I will say that there should be a rule change for next season. You have to pick your games. You have to get them in by the time the show closes. That's just my personal stipulation because you can't. You cannot be picking on a napkin like right before kickoff because you're like out with your girlfriend or whatever. I'm sorry. You gotta pick it. You gotta be here. You should be picking. Even guys like Joey Bostrom, hey, can I pick? No. You gotta put those picks whether it's before or right when the show ends. So that's my point. John Gonzalez says here, one thing to remember, the Cowboys played better on the road this year. And that is a fair point. He says Bowles is a nightmare. He says Doomsday will win, meaning I guess he would say Dallas. But the one reason I'm going to pick Tampa, and I know this is kind of like a bite the bullet type of kind of pick here. It's one of those, again, toss-up games. This is, to me, 2 of the toss-up games. We'll get to the Giants in a second. It is a close spread, but I think most people will lean toward Minnesota, and John says he is picking Dallas. Tampa, and I think Brady said this, and I can't believe I'm quoting this, after the Cardinals game. They play a certain type of football that they want to be close in the fourth quarter, and they feel that they can win those games. So if they're down, let's say 17-10 going into the fourth quarter, 17-13, they feel like they've got the quarterback. They make the plays, and if they're able to do that defensively, and that's kind of how they've won these games this year, whether you think about the Saints, the Rams, the Cardinals, Panthers, these kind of spots. I mean, that would be the one reason. And also Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans could very well be the guy that Brady's going to look to target. And I think he's kind of poised for a big week here. And I don't know if Dallas can really defend him. I mean, I think that would be my one or 2 points here. So I think objectively speaking, I'm going to go with Tampa. And again, I could see either argument for both. But I mean, there is a point that Brad made. Dallas is 3-10 since 96 in the postseason. I mean, that's an awful stat. I mean, Tampa Bay's won 2 Super Bowls since then. They've been to a couple of championship games. I mean, that's really I don't know. And McCarthy, that's the guy. Everybody talks about Staley, but I think it's Brad and maybe Justin might have brought this up. McCarthy's going to be on the hot seat if they lose this game, especially. I mean, so I don't know here. I kind of think Tampa wins this kind of a Bucs type of game all year, 24-21. 23-20, something like that. It's going to be decided by between a field goal and 5 points. And the argument here is Tom Brady in these spots. How many times does he lose? I mean, Ravens, I think about a few years, wild card weekend ago. I mean, that would be one game that comes to mind. But in these spots, for the most part, he doesn't lose. And I think he does just enough. And I kind of think that's why I'm going to go Tampa here. It's going to be a very close game. And I expect it to be because that's been most Bucs games. And can you really trust Dallas? And John wants to remind me that Zeke will have a big game. Yeah, I mean, that would be a point I would certainly contend, but I think Mike Evans is poised. I mean, if you were going to favor Dallas, I think Chris did as well. I think Dallas has the better running game. Tampa's running game has been poor this year. I mean, Brady's thrown 700 times this year? Well, actually about 600. He's thrown
Actually, it has been, yeah.
I mean, every game I watched him was 45, 47, 40. He threw, I believe, over 600 times this year. So they don't have a running game.
And it's a depleted Dallas defense, too. So there's going to be opportunities for Tampa to
That's
really
why
get it going.
I think they do just enough. I think they just do just enough I don't know about Tampa if they advance and go to San Francisco or Philadelphia. I really don't know what I'd expect, but I think they can win this game, and we'll see what happens from there. So there's one more game that we have here, and we picked obviously the locals to be last, and that is the New York Football Giants, who've returned to the postseason also for the first time since 2016. And Brian Dable, really, what a job here. I mean, he goes 9-7-1 with the Giants team. I mean, that their leading receiver was Richie James, who really had less than 57 catches going into this season, has that many catches. Darius Slayton leads them with 724 receiving yards, and this is a team that makes the postseason. Daniel Jones throws just 15 touchdowns. I mean, it's a Giants team that really, on paper, has no business being here. So you have to give a lot of credit to Brian Dable. Martindale as well did a great job on the defensive side here. But Brute Force, I mean, Giants here are 3-point underdogs against Minnesota. Vikings are the clear pretenders here in this matchup, and they were 7-9-1 against the spread as a bonus. But 48 is the over-under, 4:30 p.m. Fox game. And I mean, what do you think here? I mean, I'm going to have some crazy thoughts when I pick last, but I mean, what do you think here in this matchup? And these teams played a few weeks ago, and it was a pretty good game. And for all intents and purposes, Giants could have won, and Vikings kicked what felt like a 600-yard field goal to kind of squeak out with the win. But give me your thoughts.
Yeah, well, this will definitely be another good game that we're going to be watching. And again, that's good for considering the fact there's going to be a lot of duds this weekend. But with that being said, listen, Uncle Rob, I'm going with you. I'm right. I'm not sticking to the New Jersey team or the New York team. Technically, New Jersey. All right. I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings. I think that Minnesota is going to take care of business at home. I know that everybody and some of the points are going to come up. I know it about Kirk Cousins when it comes to the playoffs and prime time, and in these moments he just doesn't come through. I get it, okay, but what have we seen from Daniel Jones in these lights as well? What have we seen from a lot of the Giants players in this experience? And when it comes to coaching, two inexperienced coaches who have had good seasons. So I don't think there's a clear edge there. I know Dable's done a great job, okay, but I do think that the Vikings, they just have weapons on offense. I think that a lot of those weapons are going to play well in this game. I do think that the Giants are going to move the ball and score. But I think it's going to be very similar to the last game, Tom Bryce. But I will say I think that Minnesota wins by 6. I'm going to say 30-24. I think it's going to be very similar, okay? But I just think that Minnesota makes a few more plays in this game. And the Giants, who will do, Saquon Barkley will have a good game. Daniel Jones, I think, will play well. I just think they fall short, and I think that, the weapons for Minnesota are too much in this game. They score more on offense. And as much as Dable's done a great job and with Wink Martindale on defense, my apologies, okay, I do think that Minnesota has so many weapons that it's hard to hold them down, and I just think Kirk Cousins will not be typical Kirk Cousins in these moments. I think he'll have a decent game, and they will win the game.
As a follow-up, is Uncle Rob going to the game?
I don't think so. But,
okay.
Honestly, I wouldn't put it past him that I hear tomorrow that he's going to go. So,
that's why I asked.
I don't think so, but, maybe next week I'll tell you that he did.
Well, I'm sure. Listen, I don't know if Aunt Hillary might want Uncle Rob to go to the game, but I have a feeling Uncle Rob wants to go to the game, and I have a feeling Uncle Rob could definitely find a way.
It's not every day of the week that the Vikings have a home playoff game. I mean, it's been a while.
A long time. Yeah, you know what? It's a franchise you think about. Again, they've had a lot of success, but kind of intermittent of late. They did have the NFC Championship game appearance a few years back against the Eagles, but it's kind of been sporadic at best. And Justin, again, this is really, to me, in a lot of ways, a really, really intriguing matchup. I mean, these two teams played, and the Giants played really, I think, a game that a lot of people didn't think they would play as well as they did there in Minnesota on the road. And after, what the Vikings did against the Colts, and Giants played them really, really well. And the Giants team, got to give them a lot of credit. I mean, with Wink Martindale did a great job, Brian Dable, and it's a team. I mean, listen, you got to give him a lot of credit. All I could say, I mean, I have a lot of facts later on, but I mean, what do you think here in this matchup? Is the Vikings here are 3-point favorites? 48 is the over under. 4:30 p.m. Sunday game. I do have a feeling, regardless, it's going to be a good matchup because most Viking games are pretty much decided in the last few minutes. But what's your thoughts on this matchup?
In my opinion, this is the best matchup of the weekend. This is going to be the best football game, and I think both quarterbacks are going to play very well. I think both running games are going to be pretty good as well. Dalvin Cook, Saquon Barkley are both going to do well in this game, and I think that the Giants are going to be able to do a reasonable job slowing down Justin Jefferson. I think you kind of see the blueprint of what Jair Alexander did a couple weeks ago with the Packers. It's not going to be to that extent where it was like one catch, 15 yards. It won't be to that extent, but they're going to key in on him. They're going to key in on T.J. Hockenson, and this is going to be a back and forth battle all game. And I hate to say it, Vikings fans, Greg Joseph is about to join the likes of Blair Walsh and Gary Anderson, because I have the Giants winning 23-21, and Greg Joseph is going to miss a 46-yard field goal at the gun to win it.
Are you sure, though, after what happened a few weeks ago, you sure you want to say that, though? He's got a big leg there. You sure?
Gary Anderson went the entire 1998 season without missing a freaking field goal.
I remember it very well.
The biggest moment.
And that was probably the best. I probably want to say, even though the Patriots were undefeated, that might have been offensively the best team I think I've seen in my lifetime that didn't win a Super Bowl. I think it's
the 98 Vikings and the 98 Vikings and the 07 Patriots, for my money, are the two greatest teams to not win the Super Bowl.
I think I could definitely make an argument. Obviously, even both Patriots teams, the 07 and the 11 teams that lost to the Giants.
Unfortunately for Vikings fans, Greg Joseph misses at the buzzer.
And both would be missing it at home too, no less.
Yeah,
right?
and
Blair Walsh missed it at home too.
Yeah,
they play at University of Minnesota.
That one was at least outside, but that was like a 20-yard.
Well,
right?
He missed a 20-yard field goal. I know
that was a really short one. I remember that one.
Brad, whatever you do, if you send Uncle Rob the show this week, make sure that part you don't send him. Make sure you tell him to skip over that part, because I'm sure that's going to definitely rub some wounds there for him. But
he's a beaten man from all those losses.
And he's a big man. Uncle Rob's a big man, so I certainly wouldn't want to get on his bad side. But Chris, this still to me is a very, very intriguing matchup. I have a lot of high hopes. I do agree with both the guys here, and I'm sure John is going to say the same thing. I have a feeling this is going to be a really, really good game for a number of different reasons. But Vikings are 3-point favorites. They're field goal favorites here, and that's kind of the obligatory home team favorite here. 48 is the over-under. But, I mean, what do you think here? I do, in a way, respect both teams. I might actually, when I get to pick, might respect the Giants, as crazy it sounds, a little bit more. But, I mean, give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I do. I do trust the Giants a little bit more than Minnesota. Minnesota's been... like frauds is a perfect name, right, for them, because that's how they've been all year. I mean, yeah, they won 12 games, but I don't know. Kirk Cousins, we know all that stuff about Kirk Cousins. Yeah, he could have a big game without a doubt. He's got the weapons to do it. So, and we've seen him have big games, but we've also seen him have really bad games in the big spots. So, Minnesota's defense is not good. Giants defense is coming around. Thibodeau started coming around late in the year. So I think the Giants are going to win. And you know what? This might, if they do win and Daniel Jones has a big game, I mean, that might be just adding more money to this guy because he's a free agent. And it's something we would have never thought, last off season that this guy was going to get a big paycheck, but he's setting himself up for a big paycheck here from the Giants or from some other team. So I'm gonna say the Giants gonna win. Yeah, close game, 23-20, 27-4, maybe even a higher scoring, but definitely a close game. But I'm gonna go with the Giants.
As crazy as it sounds, if Daniel Jones wins, let's say he wins on Sunday and even wins another game, I mean, that might actually be from the Giants front office point. Maybe it might actually be a bad thing for them because now they're going to have to pay him a fortune because, that fan base is like, no. Hey, he won us a couple games. He didn't turn the ball over this year. Saquon's finally healthy. He didn't really have any weapons. we got to give him the
Him
farm.
too.
I mean,
He's a free agent too,
Yep.
Barkley.
I was my next point. I mean, and he had a big year already to begin with, 1,300 plus yards, and he had almost 2,000, I think, total yards from scrimmage. So, I mean, Giants are going to have some big questions here in the offseason regardless, and especially if they were to win Sunday and win even another game. Because, I mean, if they were to match up, let's say, against Philly, I mean, I think they could punch with them. I mean, I hate to say it, with your Eagles, they have a chance. I don't know if they're going to win, but, I mean, it's a Giants team. I think that, really, believe it or not, they're going to have some big decisions even in further. And let me get to John Gonzalez before I get to my comments. And John's got a lot to say here. He says, first of all, Minnesota passing defense, 31st in the league. He also said Giants had them beat when they met a few weeks ago. We referenced that as well. Also says here, Giants have all their best defensive players on the field for the first time this season. Giants have to ride Barkley. I agree with you on the last point. He says Giants, to Justin's point, with a last-minute field goal. Maybe Vikings. Well, maybe Vikings come down and get the ball, and then that's where your scenario comes out. And he says, I just see Giants playing Philly.
I do too.
Vikes are pretenders, and going to that. Vikings, interesting stat here, 7-9-1 against the spread. Giants, 13-4. I mean, that's basically almost reverse.
They have the best record of any team in the postseason against the spread. I think the Bengals did too. The Bengals were 12-4.
And I think, because I think my point was Giants in the NFL, I believe, had the best record in the spread this year. But I'm going with the Giants, but I've actually got several facts as to why. So I know sometimes, Brad, you kind of went on me during the season. Oh, I picked the Lions, I picked the Steelers, kind of picking it out of a hat. But this time, I've got some facts, and I've actually come prepared. That's why my record in the second half, by the way, was a little bit improved. 6 seed versus 3 seed. Since 2017, 6 seed is 8-2. So that's one reason why I'm going with the Giants. The 6th seed in this spots have been almost money. Giants have had 19 players with at least 1 sack. That's a big stat there, right?
Yes.
Kirk Cousins we spoke about. Kirk Cousins' career record in the postseason, 1-3. And that's interesting also because if you think about Kirk Cousins' career, right? This season, he passed, you'll never believe these names, Jim Kelly, Steve Young, and Troy Aikman, all time in passing yards. He's 28th, but that postseason record is 1-3. Justin Jefferson does have the 28 catches, 1,809 yards, 8 TDs. I think Giants find a way to keep him in check. Also here, Daniel Jones, 5 interceptions. Keys for this Giants team to be able to win this year has been they don't turn the ball over, they run the ball, as to John's point, and their defense. And Slayton, James, and Hodgins combined, they did have less catches, but I think they do just enough. And I kind of think here, Giants in this spot, just historically, 6 seed against the 3 seed. I don't know why that is, but it's 8-2. And the only 2 times that 6 seed lost in this spot last year was Buffalo. And I believe the other spot, ironically, was Minnesota. So, I mean, there's an irony here. But I kind of think here that the Giants, for those reasons, and I kind of think the Giants, the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, were the better football team. And, Brad, as you know, this being a coach and a player, there's a thing called momentum. Who has the momentum right now? It's the Giants, not the Vikings. So I think here Giants win it 27-24. 27-21. This is definitely going to be a close game, but I think those are the reasons why. And again, I think the interesting question is going to be, the 2 questions are going to be, if the Vikings lose this game, Kirk Cousins, he's going to be seen as a big choker, 1-4, right? If Daniel Jones wins this game and plays well, what happens with Daniel Jones? I mean, everybody pegged him at 3 years, $30 million as a free agent, but if he wins a game or 2 in this postseason, all bets are off because he's going to have more wins than
like $40 million a year.
Yep. Yeah. He's going to wind up having some wins more than a lot of other playoff quarterbacks. Dak Prescott and Lamar Jackson comes, if that happens, but we'll certainly see. And John says here it's going to be close. Yeah, it definitely is going to be a close. And before we get to closing thoughts, anything else you guys want to add when it comes to the Super Wild Card Weekend before we get to closing thoughts? Anything else you guys want to throw out here before we move on for the night?
I think we should do a rapid fire.
I lost you a little bit there. Let me see if you come back in. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. What was your point?
Rapid fire.
Okay. You're gonna have to repeat it for me one more time.
Yeah, I didn't hear that.
Write on a piece of paper.
Get
What
the
Rapid fire Super Bowl prediction.
Okay, all right. So you know what? That's a good one.
Okay.
All right. So you want to go first, and we'll go around the room, and we'll let John throw in this one.
I know one of the teams he's picking.
Does he?
I think so.
Yeah, I got the Bengals beating the 49ers.
Okay.
All right, Bengals 49ers. All right, fair enough. For you, the Brute Force Brad Weiss, who do you got?
This is tough, but you know what? I think I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that the Bills, like we said, DeMar Hamlin's story, I think this just further exemplifies them to continue to be inspired and win. And I just think the Eagles, too, have been the best team in the NFC, and I think they're going to show why in the playoffs. So that's the matchup, and I'm going to take Buffalo.
For you, Chris, who's your Super Bowl prediction?
You know what? I've had Buffalo over Philly since before the season started, so keep riding it.
All right, here, before I go, we have John Gonzalez has 2 more comments. He says here, Jones just has to stay away from the turnovers. Only threw 5 interceptions this year. I mean, that's what really impressed me. I mean, he didn't turn the ball over, and he's mobile. I mean, I think there's something in this kind of matchup. I don't know if the Giants can win a couple of playoff games, but I think in this matchup, they can win it. It's almost like in reverse Brady with Dallas. I kind of think in this matchup, it's just very favorable to them. And John wants to remind me that he has the Eagles and the Chiefs, and he likes the Chiefs. And I'm also going with the Kansas City Chiefs versus the San Francisco 49ers because I think that San Francisco, all roads lead to them. And I think Kansas City, because don't forget, if Buffalo and Cincinnati match up, I mean, those teams are probably going to beat each other up. So, I mean, I kind of think if you're Kansas City, if you're getting Jacksonville or Los Angeles, I mean, you're going to be really happy as pig fill in the blank. So I kind of think here it's set up for Kansas City. And I think there's kind of something that they have where losing an Arrowhead last year. So I think that's going to be on their mind. We'll see, though, if it's Kansas City, Buffalo in a neutral zone environment like Atlanta. So all great stuff there. So we'll see. I think it was a lot of fun. And we'll come back next week. We'll do the same thing, news and notes around the postseason circle, and we'll pick our games. It gets a little bit, I know, closer, and we'll see the Brute Force with their NFL Sportswire picks now that will change it from the postseason. So we'll have to have maybe a new postseason champion. We'll see, though, if John Gonzalez continues to remain in our first place for our standings or somebody else comes in the lead. So we'll see all of that. But let's go to closing thoughts here. I'm going to go first with you, Justin Gianelli, and certainly a very impactful closing thoughts I'm sure we'll get from you. Maybe we'll get 3 locks of the week. Any other thoughts on your mind out there, please throw out there, whether it's Nets, Mets, anything else on your mind, Devils. And please plug your social media, and the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Thanks, guys, for another great week. We'll talk about the Devils. They're up 4-1 going to the third period. Nets with a tough loss last night, beginning to life without Durant for the next month. But fortunately, the news is not as bad as potentially feared. So just tread water at this point, and I think they'll be fine. You can follow me on my Twitter at JGNelly12, at BBallBanterSM. And, again, next episode will probably be, I think this week. I can't remember exactly when the date is for the Hall of Fame vote, so it's right around then. I'll post the next episode. So catch you guys next week.
Looking forward to that. Obviously, I've been kind of quiet on the baseball front, other than Correa, but I'm sure we'll resume that talk very soon because, as crazy as it sounds, we're about a month or so away, a little over a month until spring training. So, listen, as I always tell everybody, I know it's January, it's cold, but we're actually at more than a quarter of the way through in winter here. So, getting there, gained a minute of light each day. So, if you're an outside worker like myself and Justin, you'll definitely notice that. But, Chris, want to give you the floor, want to give you some closing thoughts and anything that you want to plug, share, say. I'm looking forward to hearing the Liftoff show coming up here with you and Sharman this weekend. And anything else on your mind, the floor is yours, and fire away.
Thank you, Tom. Guys, thank you. Great show as always. The Liftoff show, we recorded a great episode this week. We had the great special teams coach from the Jets and Dolphins, Colts, and actually the Saints, Coach Mike Westhoff. Nice. We were lucky enough to get him on, and he was an unbelievable guest. I mean, the guy was just so open with everything. It's a great episode. If you guys want to check it out, I'm telling you, you'll love it.
I'll be listening.
Yeah, great, cool stuff that he opened up about Zach Wilson, about the Jets, and about other things. You'll definitely love it. So check it out. And then Talking Rivals, we're just going to keep with the baseball, keep updating. It's kind of quiet now, but we'll just keep updating stuff for now and see what's going on. A couple of weeks, we'll start a preview, each division and stuff like that, leading into opening day and stuff like that. But anyway, check me out on Twitter, CP7NY. You can check out the show at Liftoff Jets, at Talking Rivals as well. And definitely check out the episode. It's I'm telling you, you guys are going to love it. So
I'm looking forward to that. I will definitely make sure that I actually post a little clip of that as well. I'll actually do something special for that. So look forward to that. Also, one more before I get to Brad and closing thoughts. The announcement will be on January 24th. So that'll be next Tuesday, just to confirmation. So it's not this week. It's Martin Luther King Day. So certainly want to just make that note. So great stuff there, Chris. Everybody can follow Chris, CP7NY, also Justin JG&Ellie 91. Now, we certainly didn't save the best for last, but we did save the biggest for last, and the brute force, Brad Weiss. And Brad, I'm so curious on how our boys' JV team did at Plainview this week. If you were out there on the court playing as well, I know you're a very, very busy man these days. Maybe I know you probably weren't watching the SJLI games. I would say probably good thing on Wednesday, but definitely Saturday was a roller coaster matchup. But I'm sure we'll get a few thoughts on that as well. Boys are in action tomorrow afternoon against Sarah Lawrence, 1 o'clock at Danzy, and then we have another road trip, so that'll be interesting in itself. But certainly everybody wants to hear what you have to say on a Friday the 13th from the Brute Force closing thoughts. So certainly we'll see you there, what trickery you have up your sleeve. And the floor is yours, my friend. You know the drill, and fire away.
Yeah, Friday the 13th, pretty spooky, but another great night on the Sports Report. So thank you guys for another great show. Thank you, Chris, Justin, as always, for a great talk and a great NFL talk as we wind down on this NFL season. So certainly excited to continue to pick the games here in the playoffs. And once again, before I continue my closing thoughts, I would like to openly congratulate my buddy, John Gonzalez, all right, on winning the regular season championship, all right? You can follow him, of course, at the Sports Authorities group on Facebook. He does a great job. I certainly am always on the Sports Authorities page, seeing what he's posting, what everybody else is posting. So be sure to follow it there and give John Gonzalez a like and give him a compliment for winning because, let's butter him up right now. And then, we're gonna end his reign right now. So butter him up now. End his reign now. But anyway, you can find me on social media, Bradley Weiss on Facebook, searching at Brad Weiss 20 and at on Twitter at BWeiss20 and at Coach Brad Weiss on Instagram, and now also on TikTok at BWeiss20. So you can find me there as well. Certainly, when it comes to the boys on the court, we did play Baldwin this past week, who's obviously the cream of the crop here in Nassau County.
For sure.
And unfortunately, both teams came out with a tough loss. My kids came out. They played really well. Unfortunately, we just had a tough third quarter. We had an injury to our best player in the third. He did come back for the fourth, but it was too late as we gave up the lead, and they beat us at the end. So, tough loss, but you guys mentioned it, by the way. With the last Dolphins quarterback to win a game in 2000, I think you said, was a player who grew up in Oceanside, and that's who we're playing tomorrow. We're playing Oceanside High School tomorrow, so we're looking forward.
My friend Brandon Gaines is from there, who's from Oceanside out there. I know him very well. And for us, a coach we interviewed, I don't really want to say his name, but he's from Oceanside. Well, Dave Muchnick, he's from Oceanside as well.
So we're playing Oceanside, a really big game tomorrow for both teams when it comes to, varsity team playoff seeding. My team, just a big game record-wise to get us back to 500 right now. We're one game under with some of the tough losses we've taken. But, the upsides there, we're starting to improve, so I'm definitely happy with that. So certainly keep pace with us. Coach Brad Weiss on Instagram at POB Hawks Basketball on Instagram as well for our varsity team. Because we're doing good things, and we're looking forward to continuing to improve here in 2023. With that being said, to move on here, Tom, definitely disappointed to see our Golden Eagles go down to those Bears. But, obviously in controversial fashion, definitely not the way you want a game to end there where that there was a mistake. But ultimately, there's something called controlling the controllables, and even with the mistake, the Golden Eagles could have won the game and could have been obviously held the lead, but they did not. And the Bears, who have always been frisky and feisty, those other St. Joe's.
Dimitri Sorakis' brother. Evan Sorakis had, I think, 21 points, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good player. He's been a good player. And, listen, it's always close in those matchups. No matter what the team's records are, the Golden Eagles against the Bears is always a close matchup. And the Bears got us in Brooklyn, even though controversially. So hopefully our Golden Eagles can bounce back here, like you said, against Sarah Lawrence. Another big game in the Skyline. Yep. The team has been playing better. As we continue to say, they're playing better. And the goal is to continue to win. And then, the biggest thing, especially for teams that succeed in the Skyline, Tom, is to play well at the right time. And the right time is always towards the end of the season. So I believe our Golden Eagles are going to do that and bounce back and get some nice wins here going forward. So looking forward to seeing that. I'm trying my hardest to find a way to get to a game. But my schedule, as you mentioned, is busier than ever. So I will find my way there. Speaking of things I almost forgot, Tom Bryce, I have to let you know. All right, that last weekend before the day after we signed off, I played in the alumni game for PLB JFK, and I was very good, Tom Bryce. I came out and I hit a 3-pointer right away. The crowd was going crazy. All right, and I actually had a good day on the alumni court. My team ended up not winning the championship, but I did have a good day at the office. So certainly that's going well as my other games that we're playing. Level Up starting their men's league now, so we're starting to get in action. So looking forward to playing a little bit more as well as coaching, but all is good on my front. And listen, I'll say this to end right here, okay? The New York Knicks right now are playing pretty good basketball. Okay,
they're in the 7th seed. They're in 7th seed, yep.
They're over 500. They're playing good basketball. I'm not going to go crazy because I told you guys how I feel about them every week, okay? But I will compliment them as well and say, New York Knicks, you're playing well right now. Hope we can continue it. All right. And I will say another thing. I do think Jalen Brunson's going to be an all-star. He has played well this season for the Knicks. Julius Randle might even get a chance at that as well. But you guys all know how I feel about that. Trade him now. Take all the value right now and trade him. But we'll see what happens with the Knicks. But I will say I'm not going to go crazy. They are playing well, and they deserve my respect this week's on this show.
Absolutely, and they are kind of in a cluster of teams in the NBA who are either like 4 games under 500 or 4 games over 500. There's literally 10 or 11 teams in the NBA are in the same boat. But listen, Knicks and Giants are almost kind of in the same spot because with this whole Julius Randle situation, well, what do you do? I mean, Jones, if he plays well and wins a couple games here in the postseason, all of a sudden he's going to get the farm. And so in some ways they're kind of similar, maybe for different reasons, but we'll certainly see what happens when it comes to the Knicks. And again, obviously I want to talk about the SJLI Golden Eagles for a second before we get out of here. And kind of an interesting week. I mean, they play a game Saturday at Mount St. Vincent where they were pretty much in firm control up until I think about the 4.5-minute mark. And all of a sudden the game just got it was in slow motion, especially that last minute. They're up, I think, 10 or 11. And all of a sudden, they hit 3 after 3 after 3. It's one of those games you start getting the stomach nods. And thankfully, we made a play, and we didn't hit enough free throws, but we did just enough. We had the one play, and they get the ball back. We couldn't inbound, and that's why these college games, you just never know. And then kind of Wednesday's game was so intriguing because I know you probably didn't watch the game, but we're down 10-0 right off the bat. You're like, wow, this is not supposed to happen. Then we come out and go on a 23-4 run or 23-3 run. We're up double digits. We're up double digits most of the first half, and then they hit a couple of buckets, and we're only up 6, and you kind of feel like, all right, you're okay. And then up until the midway part, we're up by, I think, 9 or 10, and then it the game goes in slow motion. I think that this team, one of the things they have to rectify, it's been, again, something that's happened. And they know that. I speak to the guys all the time. You speak to the guys I know as well. They have to learn in these spots to be able to pull through. I don't think it's anything that, and I don't think it's anything that they're necessarily not doing. It's just that in college basketball, these teams all press. So when you're pressing at this level, you have to be able to make those adjustments. But I think we have the right team for it. I think the guy that's going to help us get through and make these plays is the guy that I think we finally found to take over your spot as the blocker. And I'm going to call him the rejector. Liam the Rejector Sheehy. This guy must have had like 15 blocks on Saturday's game. He was only accredited for 1, but he had at least 4 or 5. He had 9 rebounds back-to-back games. This guy, he can guard, he can dribble the ball, he can carry it, and he's all over the place. This guy reminds me so much of you, the Brute Force, in a lot of different ways. Maybe we'll get him a poster up at Dandy. I've been speaking to Liam quite a bit, and he's become one of my favorites. And Matt Hurt, I mean, he had bucket after bucket for us. And again, a bizarre, I don't want to harp on it too much because I am a little upset about that game because there was a technical foul called at the end of the game, which I thought was 2 shots in the ball. But apparently we only get 1 shot and no ball advancement. And then we had to call timeout again. And that in itself, to me, there should have been some explanation. Again, I don't want to harp on it too much, but there was some calls made. There was a technical foul called on us with about the 4 or 5 minute mark, and I don't even know why a technical foul was called. So, I mean, look, I'm not saying that we should have won or lost, but, you know, being diplomatic, I mean, those are things here that you know, certainly refereeing, I hope we get that rectified, and I hope that when Brooklyn comes to Danzy, that it certainly doesn't happen the same way. But I do want to give a shout out to a bunch of different guys. Tom Bell has been providing us some big minutes defensively. Tom Bell is one of these guys that's helped us here, played well. Spencer Malloy, big shout out to Spence because Spence was the Skyline Conference Player of the Week. And every time I see Spence, just pass him the ball. Just get him the ball, score some buckets. Xavier Allen is always providing us. He's kind of become our number 1A or B, depending on how you depended on it. And then Justin Turner. Justin was big for us here coming up. And he's another guy that I'm kind of really excited about. So, I mean, those are things I definitely want to keep an eye on when it comes to the team. Ryan McNeely, I was speaking with Ryan. I believe Ryan's going to bounce back and have a big game for us tomorrow. So I think at the end of the day, our boys are going to come through. I like this team. I also like the fact that we're 3-2 in conference play. So I know that these games, you know, we would have liked different outcomes. The Farmingdale game sticks out for us. The Lehman game sticks out. We had leads, but listen, at the end of the day, I believe very confidently in this team. I think I like where we're going. So Saturday is going to be a big one for us. 1 o'clock, Dandy Center. Expected to be a big crowd. Timmy Hurd, I hope is to be back soon. Alec Tabiter, remember, still not playing without Alec Tabiter. And we have guys coming in here who are playing big moments here. Chris Connors, want to give him a big shout out. Nick Nemekis, of course, your old friend from Plainview. Want to make sure we give him a shout out. Anybody else if I'm missing? Jake Gordiello, Jake in the flow. Jake's certainly we need Jake. We need a big game from Jake. We need a big week from Jake. That's what I really my key is Jake Gordiello. When Jake Gordiello plays well, we win. So that's my key here for these games coming up. Want to give a big shout out to Coach Uhl, also SJLI_MBB. I want everybody to follow the team on Instagram and Twitter. Coach is a big fan of ours. I was speaking with Coach the Brute Force here throughout the week, and one day we're going to get him on, obviously, when you have some time. And Coach is a big fan of ours as the rest of the team. I want to make sure I also shout out your old teammate, Mark Roberts Jr. Want to give Mark Richard Lawson a big shout out. Want to make sure I shout out everybody that we can because they're all big fans of us, but especially Liam the Rejector Sheehy. That's the guy that I want you to pay attention to.
Oh, he's playing great. And by the way, Tom, to your point earlier, all right, one of the worst things I hated is when you said it, and it happened to me over and over, when he probably had 3 or 4 or 5 blocks, and they only count you for 1 or 2.
Listen, I watched Wednesday's game. The dude had 4 blocks at least, and they gave him 1 block.
That's bad.
He had 5 blocks, I think, on Saturday. He had like 8. Seriously. And by the way, I want to give him a stat that, thanks to the crack staff, he's actually just outside the top 40 in the nation in block shots per game. He's just under 2 block shots a game. So he's at 1.96. So the Brute Force, he's coming for you. He's coming for you with school history and block. And he's only been here for not even a full year. So I'm just saying, Liam Sheehy, big shout out. Also, before we get out of here, I want to give a shout out to the York Cardinals men's basketball team because they had another player that scored 1,000 points for them, and it's Terrell Fullerton. Terrell scored it, what was impressive this past Wednesday, and what was also most impressive against him scoring 1,000 points against Lehman, he did that in less than 3 years. at York because he was a transfer player. You know how hard it is to score 1,000 points. So big congratulations to the York Cardinals player Terrell Fullerton. And Terrell is also scoring almost 18 points a game. He has been very impressive. He is one of the top players in the CUNYAC, and CUNYAC is certainly a very, very tough conference to score the ball in, especially with Hunter. And Hunter scores I think almost 100 a game. They're second in the nation in scoring. So the fact that Terrell Fullerton was able to do that against Lehman, big shout out. And of course, the guys unfortunately came up short here tonight against CCNY, but battled back. They were down 20 plus points, but certainly made it quite a game and lost in kind of heartbreaking fashion. But I have a very good feeling in that CUNY. They'll be back in it. Want to shout out the John Jay College basketball team, the Bloodhounds. Guys won here against Hunter. You'll appreciate this. 118-110. They won a 118-110 game because Hunter, listen, and you know this from when you played there.
Yeah.
Pessin plays a style that's just what he plays, and when you play them, you have to score, and they pressed when the game was in doubt with like 2 seconds left. That's just what he does. So I want to give a shout out to the Bloodhounds. They come up with a big win. And that CUNYAC, it's kind of deceiving with all those records because they're all kind of bunched up, and CCNY is kind of the story right now. They're 5-0 in the CUNYAC, and they've been a down program. So all things can certainly lead differently, and want to give one more shout out. I want to give a shout out to the Sportatorium podcast. I was listening to the guys yesterday morning and really enjoyed some of their takes. Of course, some of the guys are big Bills and Chiefs fans and Jets fans. So
James Cronin is a Chiefs fan.
I was going to get to James in a second, and James, love what James had to say, and they had a guest on last week's show, so really want to give them a big, big shout-out. Sportatorium Podcast, please follow them. Also, one more time, shout-out to Anastasia Resnia, who is a huge Chargers fan. So I want to thank everybody here for tuning in on Sportswire Radio. I want to thank Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter Show, Chris Bezea of the Liftoff Jet Show, which please listen to him tomorrow night on sportnarium.com/play because Coach Westfall is going to be there. I'm really, really excited about that. That is a big, big time land, big time guest. Congratulations on that. Also from the Talking Rival Show and the Brute Force, Brad Weiss, who I'm surprised voice has held up. He is also with, of course, our Plainview JFK Hawks boys JV team, POB Hawks basketball on Instagram. Also Long Island Nets, Level Up, and SJLI Golden Eagles men's basketball alum. And one more plug I promised, I almost forgot to mention it. She would kill me if I didn't give her a shout out. Coach Kelly Dempsey, because she was interviewed by the Nets Guardian magazine. There was a big write-up about Kelly and Coach Dempsey with the Making Waves in women's basketball and Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, thousands and thousands of followers. Also, she does work. She's the head clinician there for the Long Island Nets, and she's also with the Hicksville girls team, and she does she's probably on the court right now, Kelly. And I was speaking with Kelly on Instagram, and Kelly wants to come back, so I hope that we can get that going. Of course, follow Coach Dempsey at KED Training, KED Training. Follow her page. She's doing so much, and love everything that she does and her family. Ed Dempsey, and she was talking about her dad with me, and she's always, the family supports us like there's no tomorrow. So thank you to Coach Dempsey. I promised I would get that plug in there as well. So thank you everybody here for tuning in on the number one global radio station. If you are on Sportswire Radio, sportnarium.com/play, you'll go back to your regularly scheduled programming for the sit-down marks. And also, again, we are back on live tomorrow night in a doubleheader, as I pointed out this afternoon, with Wrestling Championship Entertainment's the resident rock star Sean Jovi and the new Messiah Nicholas Crenton. I'll be back Sunday as well, right before kickoff for the Giants, with pro wrestling sensation Jenna. Jenna's coming to the United States. We'll talk about that plus much, much more. And thank everybody here for tuning in. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. If you like us on Facebook, continue to support us on Sportswire Radio, YouTube at Sportswire Radio. Thank you again, everybody, on the number one global radio station. Happy Martin Luther King Day as well, and happy Friday the 13th. If you celebrate that, that's your thing. And thank you, everybody. Good night.